All right, we're gonna give this a minute to see if it works. Hello, anyone who's seeing this now. I'm randomly going live because I need to test StreamYard because I'm going to use StreamYard from here on to do live streams, and in this our age of Corona and all of that jazz, I'm gonna try live streaming more. I see there's 4 of you. That's cool. Yes, say hi. I'm also testing the chat function to make sure I can see you. I can see you. This is awesome. Because I'm going to do a bigger live stream at the end of the month on March 28th with a bunch of authors. So this is my test run. Hello, everyone. Hi. Oh, this is so cool. Can you believe it took me this long to try StreamYard? Yeah. How is everyone? Happy Saturday. Oh, yay. I know it's a surprise because I never do this because I'm terrible. I think my last live stream was September 2018. Like just me on this channel. Obviously, I did Novelty up until they discontinued Hangouts, but this is good too because it's a test, and once I know how it works, I'll tell Kat and Lainey, and we can get back on that. So, did I watch the Oscars? Here, oh, I can do a thing where I show your questions. Oh, this is so fun. Okay, cool. Man, StreamYard's great. Maybe this is why YouTube discontinued Hangouts, because they're like, someone else is doing better. And yes, I love this cup. Is that, hold on, Katarina Naria? Nice. This is from, I think, TJ Maxx or Home Goods. It's a specific kind of cup. The Portobello by Inspire. My mom used to buy these for me because they're microwave safe, and I love them. And they don't break because they're like that melamine stuff. So did I watch the Oscars? Yes, I did. It was weird. I really enjoyed it. It was bonkers. It's like they had given up, and that made it really entertaining. And then I just couldn't believe Parasite won. I was like, wow. All of those super white boomer movies basically canceled each other out, which is pretty incredible. And I gotta mute my tab on Gmail because it was making noise. Oh, here. Oh, I'm gonna use this. Thank you. This is from Torrid. Though, funnily enough, I bought it the week they put it on the site because I was like, stars, but also it's like a soft tea, which I really like. It's not on there anymore. They sell out of certain things really, really fast, and then they get rid of them. What kind of tea? I'm drinking coffee. This is French roast from Trader Joe's. The quarantine, I'm going to drink so much coffee because I won't drink it at work anymore. It's going to be so strange. I'm working from home. Oh, this is so cool. Here, and I'll just like go through these. I have 2 books published. Hi, more people joining. Brightly Brooding, which is Jane Eyre in Space, is out, and The Stars We Steal is also out. I have to get used to that. That came out in February. And that one is Jane Austen meets The Bachelor in Space, and my next one is The Ivies. So, oh, see, I'm learning. You put it up and then you can hide it. This is so cool. This is a good question. Yes, I am. Though honestly, with all of these cancellations of movies, they might push it. It's bonkers. One movie theater, I subscribed to like their updates, and they said they won't sell more than 200 tickets for any single showing because of social distancing. But at the same time, all these studios have already postponed or gotten rid of things. So we'll see if The Woman in the Window makes its regular release date. But I am excited because I genuinely think it will improve upon the things I didn't like about the book. A movie can do that in a good way because a strong performance can fix what was poor foreshadowing, in my personal opinion. And I love Amy Adams. I adore her. She's so talented. Oh, this is a good question. All right, let's just dive in. Yeah, I mean, hit me with questions. I didn't prepare anything for this live stream, though I do not have my eye makeup on. And I thought I could do my eye makeup because people always ask me how I do it. So that might be something I do while we talk. How do I think coronavirus will affect the publishing industry? It already has. So the big impact so far, events are all canceled. It's going to impact kind of debuts as well as mid-listers the most because, well, debuts because what a time to debut in. And they can't have launch parties. Any events that debuts were booked at, they can't go, which is a huge bummer. and mid-listers. Let's talk about mid-listers and below. I actually saw someone on Twitter, no names being named, poo-pooing like, oh guys, don't worry, it's not a big deal. I usually only sell like 10 to 15 books at an event. It's fine. And I'm sitting here like, I would never turn my nose up at 10 to 15 sales. That's actually, when you are mid-list and below, like if you're a bestseller, that's nothing. But that said, bestsellers at events can sell more like 50 books. So they're also looking at pretty decent numbers at any event. But if you are less popular, those sales make a huge difference, especially if you do multiple events over the course of several weeks, and spring is a massive event season for publishing. Those sales can really add up. To give you an idea, fall's another really popular book season, and the year my book came out, I did 3 events in a row really close together, and that week I sold 100 copies, which is more than I'd been selling for a while. Like, it legit jacked my numbers up significantly, and it was a really good week for me, and that makes a difference. I say don't look down on any book sale, but that's just me, so it's a bummer. Most publishers are work from home now, and the way that I think it's going to disrupt the publishing industry, certainly in the short term, I think it's twofold. One, a lot of agents and editors are going to have more time to read, so I actually think it's good for both querying and authors on submission in terms of getting reading done, like people reading them and attention. But because no one's going to work anymore, it's going to disrupt acquisitions meetings. So it's going to disrupt books being bought, which will slow things down, which sucks because things had slowed down throughout 2019 and 2020. Throughout 2018 and 2019, but specifically 2018, I saw a lot fewer acquisitions. It's like everyone in publishing was exhausted. And I kept predicting that this subseason, so winter, spring 2020 and into fall, that we would see a huge uptick in acquisitions because there's almost nothing on the list for 2022 and publishing buys several years out. And this is going to disrupt that. So it's going to be really, really interesting. That said, I say that editors and agents are going to read more only if they don't have kids, because with all of these school cancellations, you're going to have people who are going to have to do full-time childcare that no one was expecting to do. And that's going to disrupt a lot of people. And I'm really worried about the economy, but it's fine. It's fine. So how is book editing going? It's going. I am almost to Act 3, and my goal for this weekend is to get there, because it should be pretty like decent from Act 3 on. Like, I don't have a ton of edits to make. Oh, cool. There's 142 of you. This is so neat. It's going. We can talk about revision stuff, like obviously not details because I don't want to blow my entire book because I still want people to read it. But yeah, then this is good. The posters in the background. So these are, my mom and I bought them at the farmer's market years ago, and she, who was a good adult, helped me frame them because, you know, I'm terrible. Otherwise, I had no decor in my apartment until several successive visits from my mother where she made me decorate my apartment. I'm really terrible. They are former like labels from boxes. So like lemons, they're actually all lemons in here, from California. So they're like box labels from brands from like the 1920s and 30s and 40s, and you can buy them. So I think they're really cool. So I bought a bunch and I framed them. They're very California, and I like retro kind of art advertising style anyway. So yeah. I'm getting through your comments. I'm catching up. This is so cool. Hold on. The chat jumped and I'm so behind. This is so cool. Sorry. It's so interesting seeing me read, right? This is a good question. What keeps you going when you're not motivated to write? Honestly, I've cultivated certain just kind of habits where I've learned to force myself. That said, sometimes I do take a break. But I'll say to myself, all you have to do is this, and I'll make it easy, like a paragraph or half a scene. Just look at it, like open the thing and look at it. And usually I can kind of get into the groove and get something done. I basically pep talk myself and make myself do it. And that's when I actually have to, like a deadline. Sometimes you should take a break. So I've had multiple days during this revision where I just took a break. Like last night, I didn't do anything. It was my first day working from home. I hate working from home. And I went to the grocery store in the evening, braving the grocery store. And I got home super late and I was just like, I'm not going to work on my revision. And that was okay. And I gave myself a break. So that is good. Here's a good one. Is The Stars We Steal a specific Jane Austen adaptation or just inspired by her? I love this question because if you guys watch this channel and have watched this channel for a while, you'll know that it started out and I've promoted it as Persuasion in Space. And as I actually drafted the book, I was like, oh no, it is technically. So the romance arc and the setup is Persuasion, because that is directly what I was inspired by and I was trying to do a retelling of. But I had to make certain changes in a good way. There are very faithful retellings, and I would consider Brightly Burning incredibly faithful. To some people, that's a fault. To others, it's not. And to some fans, it's not faithful enough. It's fascinating because you're never going to make everyone happy. But with Persuasion, I made a decision pretty early on to be way less faithful because modernizing and adapting it for YA and sci-fi and to fit into a pre-existing universe that I had written was challenging. And like, for example, as soon as I made the change, a huge conceit of Persuasion is that Wentworth and Anne don't talk to each other for almost the entire book. Because social convention at the time, men and women didn't converse casually because that was very scandalous. So it was incredibly easy for them to just not talk to each other and sustain this ridiculous thread of core misunderstanding and no one communicating their feelings. And that just didn't work for me. These are modern teenagers and I need people to speak to each other. So it morphed over time. And then I added a bachelor plotline. And by the time I did that, I made it more kind of like my favorite bits of Persuasion, Emma, and Pride and Prejudice. So it's more of a hybrid, and it's like my love letter to kind of Regency, Jane Austen aspects and tropes more than like specifically one Jane Austen book. At least that's how I see it. Oh, this is, I have a copy of it, a Word doc, actually PDF that Emily sent to me, and I haven't read it yet, but I will. Probably as soon as it comes out, I'm going to feel behind, so I will read it. I've just been on such an aggressive thriller kick that I haven't read a fantasy in a while, so not yet. This is good. When submitting your first book in a planned series, do you let the agent know that you plan for it to be a series of books? This is a delicate dance. You should always say, complete at X words, blankety blank, stands alone, but, oh, what's the phrase? I should have this phrase memorized. It is a standalone with series potential. There you go. It is a standalone with series potential. You shouldn't directly admit you've already planned it as a series. You just you say, it stands alone, but that's the way to do it. Because the reality is right now in the industry, that most publishers are not buying series. They're definitely not buying trilogies, except in very rare cases. In fact, Wicked Saints is one of the last times that I saw a Big Five publisher buy a fantasy trilogy, like ahead of time, like for sure. 2 books is far more common for a deal, and sometimes even honestly, if book 1 doesn't take off, you don't even get to write a second book in a series. Series just haven't performed well in YA in a really long time. I actually think it's because we flooded the market with them. And also because a lot of people really screwed up their book twos. But yeah. Do I have advice on drafting for planters? This is a cop-out, but honestly, watch every video I've ever done, but especially in the last year, about my writing process. Because this is me now. My latest one, watch my Write a Thriller Backwards video, Draft a Thriller Backwards. That is the latest way that I have been writing, because I do fall in the middle between pantsing and planning, and it's really helped me kind of figure out my books ahead of time and kind of go through them. And another thing I use, which I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned it in that video, but I do mention it in my new writing process video, which I posted in the fall. Something I do constantly as I'm writing, but especially in Act 2, which is the hardest. It's the one act I cannot outline for the life of me ahead of time, other than like a few points. I stop as I'm writing. I've done this in revision 2. And I jot down a series of both cause and effect. So things that need to happen or need my character to do, but also questions that they should be asking at this point in the manuscript. And I literally just write out the series of things that need to happen in the next few scenes. And then I write those, and then I stop again and I do it again. And so it's like breadcrumbing my way through the harder parts of the novel, but I cannot do it ahead of time or I'll die, basically. What is my least favorite book or my least favorite writer? I don't even know if I can answer that. I try not to read books I don't like. Here, I'll show the question briefly. I honestly, genuinely try not to read books I don't like and authors that I don't like. I avoid stuff like that ahead of time. I'll keep thinking about it in case something comes to mind, but nothing immediately comes to mind. That is so cool. Oh, did you get any of my donuts on my release day? They were delivered to the office and no one was there. So apparently other people ate them, which is good. I'm glad someone enjoyed them. But yeah, that was fun. Do I think BookCon will be canceled? I have a feeling it might be, to be perfectly honest. We haven't seen any major May cancellations yet, though, so I think everyone's waiting to see how things progress. So I can tell you from the event planner side, so I've planned multiple Harry Potter conventions. They're really, really expensive, and Harry Potter conventions are on the low end of expensive. They cost a little over $100,000 usually, at least mine did. And we were charging for tickets. So I know BookCon charges, but I'm thinking of all of the poor book festivals that don't even charge, but still cost a lot of money to put on. All of these events canceling are losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is going to be really, really bad for a lot of people economically. So I imagine BookCon, which is run by Reed Elsevier, my mom used to work for them, is holding on to the last possible minute because the cancellation means hundreds of thousands of dollars just flushed down the toilet. So that's my guess. In fact, BookCon might be one of the more expensive ones. Something like a Comic-Con, that probably costs millions. Bigger shows cost more money. So yeah, I think they're going to hold off until the last minute to cancel that. This has to be good for ebooks, right? Honestly, probably. Although it sucks is that publishers are, so I haven't made this a secret, but I also haven't specifically talked about it. I loathe traditional publishers' ebook policies, FYI. Like, I love traditional publishing, I'm all in, but there are things they do that I hate. And one of the things they do that I hate is A, ebook pricing, or 1, ebook pricing. 2, they are misers when it comes to libraries and ebooks. They're horrible. They'll only allow 20 people to check out an ebook. Some cases it's 12, and the ebooks that the libraries have to buy are more expensive than regular ebooks. So they have to spend $40, $50 on a gosh darn ebook, which is just stupid. And some of them don't play nice with the different kind of readers. And actually, this isn't just ebooks, but fun fact for audio, Audible doesn't do overdrive, which is why most Audible exclusive audiobooks are not available in libraries. Mine isn't, which sucks. We've got lots of problems, but ebooks. So in this time when everyone's home and needs to read, most of these libraries are going to run out of their ebooks, which sounds crazy because it's digital and there should be a limitless supply. But I think it's really going to expose this particular crack in the industry. The way that traditional publishing handles ebooks in libraries is abysmal, in my personal opinion. And they're generally overpriced. You shouldn't pay, an ebook shouldn't cost the same as a physical book, because a physical book you have to pay to print the paper. I think it's stupid. Anyway. Let's see. I'm catching up on questions. Oh, BookCon discussion. Yes. Here. Does music help me write? Yeah, it does, but it's usually classical. Not always. I do have some pop playlists. I've used a pop playlist for the Ivies and the Stars We Steal, but I didn't for Brightly Burning. I used only like movie scores for that. And it really depends. If something's too like wordy, like something I like and I want to sing along to, I will think about the lyrics of the song rather than words on the page, which is why I like movie scores a lot. This is a very good question. No, only because I've distanced myself pretty decently from fan fiction, to be honest. It was 8 million years ago. I wasn't that popular in the first place, so that works out. I highly doubt many people remember me, so it's good. There are a couple things where it's like, but generally no. But I also think that fanfic writers should be allowed to like fall into their fandoms and like do whatever like crazy things they're gonna do. I don't think it's indicative of their real lives, and I don't think it should control them forever. So I don't specifically have regrets, but I was doing fanfiction during the dark ages. Hello. I'm internet old, which means I'm from LiveJournal. And before that, Yahoo groups. So old. When fandom and mainstream culture were like very strictly separated, we literally had in fandom norms of never talking about it or revealing the secrets of fandom to people. And you would socially ostracize people who did it. Like, I don't know who it was, but I'm still mad at whoever had the Phelps twins from Harry Potter from the movies hold up a sign about twincest. Assholes. Don't break the fourth wall of fandom. But that's different now. Fandom's very mainstream, and you're allowed to say that you write fan fiction. I do now. I kept it a secret for more than 10 years. So I think writing it now is very, very different. I would make very different choices if I were in fandom now. So if you are a young fandom person and you plan on pursuing professional publication, either keep those two worlds completely separate or don't write certain things. Will you write more since social interactions are not recommended? Honestly, it's not going to make any difference to me. I'm on deadline for my book. I have this is one weekend, and next weekend is my second last weekend to write it, to work on it. And so I'd already canceled all my plans. I had no plans for the entire month of March for the weekends because I have to write. Won't make a difference, honestly. Isn't that sad? Yeah. I think writers who hadn't been on deadline their writing productivity is going to increase, I think. That said, I think that it's very easy to get anxious, and anxiety does not help with creativity, so it's a thin line. I've been trying not to psych myself out. This is pretty freaky. Where do you draw the line between inspiration versus copying? Also, I love this feature of StreamYard. I'm super into it. Inspiration versus copying. That is also a thin line. Everything's a thin line right now. If it feels like fan fiction, you're too close. If like, for example, if it's a young boy who discovers he's a wizard and he goes to boarding school and he makes two friends, a girl and a boy, and there's a big bad who tried to kill him as a baby, you're writing Harry Potter fan fiction. Generally, anything that's a little too close to specific systems in another thing. That said, there's a lot you can get away with. Do you know how many YA books have come out or are coming out that are literally Avatar: The Last Airbender with like small tweaks? So many, and they all got away with it. So what is the line between inspiration and copying? It's what you can get away with. Isn't that sad? That's true, though. And I mean, same thing. There's actually a rich culture, a remix culture in literature and in media, period, which is why retellings are a thing. Like, sometimes people will be like, well, you don't really write real novels because they're retelling, so it's not original. And I'm like, but it's part of a rich literary tradition. Just because you're inspired by a previous story, which is literally the history of all literature and media, doesn't mean that your execution of something isn't original. It really is about how you execute it and also what you're riffing off of. There is a difference between copyright-free classic stories and something that's on television right now and you're really inspired by it and you want to write something similar with the same characters. It's very, very different. And the legalities are literally different as well. Yeah, I love it. So for context, anyone who's watching who doesn't know my background, I worked with college admissions stuff for a couple of years. Really, though, to be fair, I got to refresh my lipstick. Hold on. I can literally see it wearing off in the video. Can I just say that I use these, but I hate this Wander Beauty thing where it's mini lipsticks and I really love this color and I don't like this one and I cannot buy this one in a full size. And I think that's a really dumb thing that they do. Anyway, So I specifically helped with essays. Essays have been my bread and butter. So I've helped underprivileged girls in Los Angeles with their college admission stuff for 6 years. Wow, yeah, a long time. And primarily it's essay help, but because they are part of it's a writing organization that I volunteer with, and because they're generally underprivileged, they don't have a lot of access to information, we help with everything. So selecting the schools that you're going to apply to, financial aid information, and I love all of it. So I've done kind of that whole cloth stuff with them. And when you help low-income students with college admissions, you learn a lot about privilege and college admissions. Well, plus I attended an elite school on a scholarship, so I know a lot about things. And then I professionally was also paid to help kids with essays for a couple of years. The only reason I stopped is because I got a book deal and my deadlines became super overwhelming. But so I've done like kind of that side. I've helped tons of kids with their essays. And I've also just like been on College Confidential more than is advisable, and Applying to College, which is a subreddit. And you just get the lay of the land with parents and financial aid and other consultants. And so I saw the scandal coming a mile away, kind of, except what is stupid about it to me, and there have been articles about this, I'm not the only one saying it, what I think is bonkers, there were already a ton of really easy ways for rich people to get their kids into elite schools, and it wasn't cheating. If you make a big enough donation, you can get your kid into a school. Everyone knows that. If you get a good enough coach, admissions coach, they're tens of thousands of dollars, the really good ones, and you get them years in advance, they can strategize to get your kid into a really good school. The thing is, it might not be the exact elite school. So what floored me was the entitlement in that scandal of, well, no, it's not good enough for them to get into a top 10 school. I want it to be this top 10 school that they're not qualified to go to. So I'm going to cheat. Ugh, ridiculous. So it amuses me. I had started the Ivies before it happened. And I actually had been, I actually did semi-outline the book. And one of the points I had was, SAT scam question mark. And I was halfway through my draft and I had decided like 2 weeks before, it's probably not, it's a little too complicated to have a SAT scam in this book. And then that happened and I was like, going back in. So the federal scam actually gave me some great ideas. I'm not a cheater by nature. I'm not devious. So I didn't exactly know how to cheat on your SATs, and now I do. It's good to know. Okay, beta readers. So this is hard. I have a stable of people that I've just known for years. So to be perfectly honest, the way now that I choose my beta readers, it's the same people. It's always been, it's like this group of friends who are all either agented or published. Some aren't agented yet, but like I've known them for like 6 or 7 years. And I just trust them and I trust their stuff because I've read and CP'd for them. And depending on kind of how busy they are, I'll go to people who I think have time and be like, hey, can you read this? Or if they have like a specific area of expertise I need. I do not have coronavirus. And actually the sad thing about it is I always need tissues and I'm almost out because I have a severely deviated septum and my sinuses drive me absolutely insane. So I sniffle in public all the time and people probably think I'm toxic, but I'm not. I'm not sick. So originally, though, how I picked them out, and I do take on new people. They just tend to be like authors in my circle, AMM mentors, or people in my debut group. Well, enthusiasm for the project matters, honestly. When you throw your pitch out there, if someone's genuinely enthused, get them to read it, because like they are most likely to be similar to your target readership, because you want your target readership to be excited about your book. So you can get some really good opinions from people like that because they are your target readership. Whether I trust that they're a good writer honestly matters to me. I do think about that. So obviously in early days, you're mostly going to do beta swaps. So it's good. It's good to look at their writing. Look, how sophisticated is their pitch? Are they aware of the market? Like, will this survive in the market? And then how do they execute it? Do you trust their writing? If you trust their writing, you can trust them usually to evaluate your writing. So those are things that I would definitely consider. What keeps you motivated while writing your books? Honestly, being published. I know that sounds like even before I was published, meaning I had a goal, an end goal, and it helped me keep my eye on the prize. I know not everyone is motivated, goal motivated, or deadline motivated like that, and I say all the time you shouldn't need external validation to write, and that is true. In the hardest moments, that should be true. You should want to finish it because you want to finish it because you care about the story. But honestly, when it's really, really hard, it does motivate me knowing, like on the first book, it was, I really want to have a book in bookstores, and you can't unless you finish something. That did genuinely help me. And on every subsequent book, my second book, because the first one didn't get published, same thing. I was even hungrier because the first book failed. And I was like, I have to finish this because I have this goal. And then that didn't work. So same thing on the third one. I had this aggressive goal of at that point, I needed a new agent. So honestly, what got me through that book was I have to finish this quickly, and it has to be really, really good because I want a new literary agent, and I'm only going to query really good literary agents, like top of the line agents with sales. And then after that, of course, I had a contract. So the second one, it was not so much being published because I was guaranteed it was in my contract. It was going to be published. It was not embarrassing myself. That was my motivation on the Stars We Steal. Don't embarrass yourself. Make it better, etc. And then on the Ivies, again, the motivation was to be published because it was written out of contract. I needed to sell it. So either getting an agent or actively selling a book or not embarrassing myself. Those tend to be my motivations, and they help me. I think that publication is a pretty good goal to push you through when it's hard, whether you're self-publishing or traditionally publishing. So, but that can also be a double-edged sword because when it doesn't work out, you can, feelings, emotions. We all have so many emotions. Is it harder to... Oh, here. Is it harder to publish a series of books rather than a standalone as a debut author? Yes. It's definitely harder to sell a series as a debut now. I don't think it's going to stay like that forever. I think everything cycles back. I think it's only going to take a few really juicy duologies and trilogies to kind of get that appetite going again. And it's going to be a matter of publishers trusting and hedging bets and having the kind of money and risk tolerance to do it. But generally, it's way easier to sell as a standalone. And if you are planning a series, you make that first book standalone. That's your best bet for sure. What am I reading? Right now, I am reading Who Did You Tell by Leslie Cara. She wrote The Rumor, which I read last year. And I had problems with The Rumor. I still liked it. But it turned out the reason I had the problem, it had been set in the UK, and for some reason for the United States, they changed it. So instead of a village in the UK, a seaside village, they made it a random town in Massachusetts, but kept a lot of the Britishisms, and it didn't fit. This one's actually set in Britain. It's a little, I got to 27% last night, and then finally, it kind of got to the inciting incident. It's a slow burn. I don't know how I feel yet about it, but I just read His and Hers by Alice Feeney. 5 stars, so good. It's in my reading vlog, which just posted. So good. And I feel really terrible reading all of these amazing thrillers that you guys can't read for months and months and months. But His and Hers was really, really good. Soapy. I really hope they adapt it for television specifically. Let's see. Sorry, the chat jumped again. It's hard to keep up. I don't want to skip too much, but at the same time, I feel like I'm missing stuff. All right, so bear with me while I go back to find where I left off. And yeah. Oh gosh. There's so many questions. I love it. Keep going. Oh, it literally has I can't even go back further. Okay, I'm probably going to miss some of your questions, and I do apologize. All right, this is a good question. How long do you suggest trying to query a book before giving up and self-publishing? It depends. First of all, if your goal is traditional publishing, even if you give up on a title, don't self-publish it. Write another book, try querying again. If you're like dead goal. Like all you want is traditional publishing. Because if you self-publish a book, that's your debut. There are like exceptions for kind of getting over that, but it's always best if traditional publishing is your end goal, not to self-publish something that doesn't work well in queries. That said, if you do still want to self-publish something that didn't work well in queries, that's fine. I personally don't think there are 100 good agents for most books. I would give up around the 50 mark, maybe 75, and even that's pushing it for me. Personally, you're speaking to someone who only never queried more than 30 agents, though. That said, there are fewer agents who rep YA sci-fi. There's a reason I didn't query that many agents, but also I had very high standards. I mean, I rail on this on my channel all the time. Don't query shme agents. Don't query mediocre agents. They're literally a waste of your time. You will throw away years of your life and your career signing with a bad agent. So that's why my preference is always write another book to get the agent that you want. So 50, 75 queries. Time-wise, the problem is the agents are slower than ever. In the past, I might have said a year. Honestly, now it might be a year and a half or 2 years because of how freaking long it can take to query a book. You can still have a shot with an agent. They just might take 9 months to read it, which isn't great. Not great, to be honest, but that is the lay of the land now. And in that time, I would expect you to write a new book that you can then query. So that's kind of my benchmark. T. What kind of covers do you hate? Ugly ones? That's very subjective. I don't like really cheesy covers, which of course there are plenty in YA. I don't like covers that all look the same, and that's a lot of them right now. Like, do you have that problem too, guys? Like I do, where it's like you see an illustrated cover and you think it's another book. Lipstick. That's a problem now. I don't hate those covers. Like, they're not horrible, but I wouldn't want that to happen to me. I wouldn't want my publisher to give me a cover that looks like everyone else's cover. That's a good question. Yeah, like kind of Uncanny Valley. That's a good. I hate Uncanny Valley covers. This is where like usually when there's people on them where they look like creepy dolls who might murder you. Don't like that at all. Like where it's almost too photorealistic or not photorealistic enough. It's Uncanny Valley covers where like I think I might die. I don't like those. And then just ugly colors. I have colors I hate, which is purely subjective. Was public speaking ever a challenge for you coming into the IRL writing community? You seem very well practiced. Thank you. Yes, it used to be. The reason I'm well practiced, this is my advice, one, start a YouTube channel. If you watch my early videos, I'm pretty stiff actually. And you just get used to it and you warm up. I mean, unless you don't, some channels don't, but I did. When you edit yourself, you listen to yourself and you're like, oh no. And you pick up your tics, and if you're smart, you can fix them. So I become more relaxed. I also generally, if you are doing YouTube, don't script your videos. I never have. Some people have accused me on my early videos. I'm like, no, I'm just really stiff in front of the camera. But I genuinely, like, I know some people love scripting their videos, and I get it. But I think that to become truly practiced in public speaking, you have to learn how to speak off the cuff naturally when responding to questions or topics. That's how you get good with even speeches, because you will script a speech. I've given one speech so far. It was at a library conference. I haven't done like a keynote or anything. But on panels, you can't really script. So you have to get used to it. And that's the other way that I did this long before my YouTube channel. I moderated a ton of panels because I was a volunteer at DragonCon. And part of working for DragonCon is the track staff mods all their panels. And I got really comfortable. I had to come up with the outlines for the panels I was modding. And then it was my job to do introductions for authors and field questions to them. And I got really comfortable just being on the stage. And what I loved about modding, I genuinely recommend this as like a slow slide. Volunteer at your local book festivals or at your local bookstore to moderate conversations with authors or cons, because the pressure's off you. You don't have to give brilliant answers to any of the questions. You just have to do a nice introduction with limited stumbling and throw questions at other people and then listen to them and nod as they talk and like kind of look for opportunities to kind of facilitate conversation. I love it. But it got me very, very comfortable in front of a couple hundred people at a time. And it's just practice. You do it over and over and over again. and you get better and better at it. But I am the person in high school and college who would make herself sick about even answering questions in class, but let alone public speaking. So it's a skill that you can develop over time. And I recommend that authors do it. Even if you have social anxiety, the number one best thing you can do for your career is become more comfortable looking at yourself, listening to yourself, and speaking about yourself in your book, which is always going to feel awkward, but you do get used to it. And you also will practice canned responses. Like I can like just throw out answers that sound really similar and pitches for the books. Oh, I love this question. No. Do I think physical books will cease to exist? No, never. Hardcore book people prefer physical books. We also read ebooks. Like you're not hardcore if you prefer ebooks, but they do surveys. And so like data has shown that book people like physical books. I don't think they're ever going to go away. I think that it already has diminished number of copies that they print and sell because the ebook market has developed its share, but it hasn't really budged. I'm going to throw a number out of my butt. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. I want to say ebook market accounts for 25% of sales, approximately, maybe even less for traditionally published titles. People overwhelmingly still buy the physical copies. That's definitely accurate for my numbers. And that includes young people. I love you, Gen Z. You're great. You still read books, physical books. So I don't think they're ever going to totally go away. It is a different experience having a physical copy in your hands. It does make a difference. It's literally how your brain processes it as well. Plus eye strain. You need electricity to read an ebook. You need the money to have an e-reader. I think that physical copies of books, there's a lower barrier to entry for low-income people as well. So I think for many reasons, physical books will not die, and I'm happy. I do think we'll, again, have less and less also just because of paper shortages and expense. But I think what we'll see for that, honestly, is publishing acquiring fewer books rather than necessarily printing fewer copies. Though they are printing fewer copies. Print runs have definitely gotten smaller. It's better to do a reprint, do a new print run, than to print too many of a book and then have to trash them. Like literally, you have to shred them, pulp them. So that's a waste of money. Yes, and also it's never gone away, to be honest. But also yes, fantasy, YA fantasy is an evergreen genre, which is good. It's an evergreen genre, period. It's generally you find that two primary genres are just really dominant. They're more likely to go mainstream, and that's fantasy and contemporary kinds of fantasy. High fantasy is a little less accessible than grounded fantasy, for example. It's all about accessibility, and contemporary is the ultimate accessible genre. So those are evergreen. You can always sell books in those areas. Sci-fi is a lot harder. Things like historical are also niche, or Western, and so on. Fantasy is evergreen, but particularly in YA, they've never stopped buying and selling fantasy. What has changed is the types that they're buying and how big some of them get. I would have said we haven't had a major YA fantasy success in a while, but then Serpent and Dove happened. And that, I think, so you wait until there's something that booms, and then that shapes the trend. So I think Serpent and Dove is opening the door for really lush, that's not even the best word. It's honestly hardcore romance. Really romance-based YA fantasy, I think, is coming back. And if you think about some of the most popular YA fantasies, they all have shipping at the center of them. They're pretty romantic. And really, Shelby Mahurin and Serpent and Dove, it's satisfied that itch that SJM fans have, Sarah J. Maas. So I think that's why it really captured the attention of a lot of people, and I think we're going to see more like that. But before that, the trend for a while was like elemental. Then we had a lot of court YA, like revenge, like hard girl court fantasy. So it just cycles. So all that's changing is what's popular. And that said, because YA bought a ton of fantasy, like 2016, 2017, into 2018, and most of them didn't hit, which is just numbers, like that's just statistics. But because of that, they have tapered off on buying them, but it's going to come back. It's going to come back surging. It's always about waiting and writing the right kind at the right time, basically. Here's a super specific question. upmarket romance. It really depends how romancy it is and how upmarket it is. You might be better off pitching it as upmarket suspense or possibly just a book. Like if it is actually upmarket, it could just be a literary novel. You could literally pitch it just as a novel. So it really depends. Romance as a category is incredibly specific. Like it has to have a happily ever after to actually be a romance. If it's more women's fiction-y, then it's like upmarket women's fiction. So it just depends. But upmarket is that nice buzzword that we talked about recently. I've started to use it a lot. It's great. I don't write upmarket, but I know it when I see it. I love staying home. So yes. Because like I said, I literally had not planned to leave my apartment. So I'm good. I cleaned last weekend. I always feel more centered when my apartment's clean. I got tons of coffee. I got cats. There's one over here sleeping. Oh, you're such a good baby. They love having me home, so that's great. I won't start to go stir crazy. It'll probably take me 4 or 5 days, and then I'm going to want to leave my house. But I'll be fine. And I do actually plan on leaving my house. I'm going to work next week, one day, because I need them to fix something with my loaner laptop. But it's fine because there's toilet paper at the office. So that's good. People have lost their minds. See, jumping back because I'm so far behind. I mean, the question is, are the publishers going to respond to this problem and do something about it? I am not sure. It'd be really nice if they did, though, because exactly, patrons can't even go to their libraries right now. It's a huge bummer. And selfishly, I'm like, maybe they'll buy more books. So, like, it's this weird cause and effect where it's like, well, all the events are canceled, but people really want to read, so maybe they'll buy more books. We're just going to have to see how that goes. I have 2 cats, they're the best. Teddy and Peta, they're fluffy ginger cats. Teddy's definitely part Maine Coon, and Peta's like properly Maine Coon, though he could be half. Point is, they're big, ginger, fluffy, and I love them a lot. Maine Coons are basically dog cats. Well, first of all, they choose one person, and that person is their person, and they tend to stay within 10 feet of that person at all times, which I can report is true. They're very loyal. They're good with people. They're good with other pets. One of them, mine, Peta, plays fetch, and it's adorable. And they also talk to you. Maine Coons are very talky. So my cats have different like meow sounds they make, and I can usually tell what they want. The worst one is there's a warble that means they're about to vomit. And I will say they vomit all the time. They're long-haired, and there are cons to that, but they're so fluffy. I love it. I'm a sucker for anything fluffy. My dream is to get a Newfoundland dog. I want a big, fluffy animal family. But I live in a small apartment. So, although the irony is Newfoundlands actually don't need a lot of exercise and do well in small apartments. So do Great Danes. Go figure. Oh, I see someone in the comments answered that I have fluffy cats. Yes, I do. You see them in videos sometimes. It's like an Easter egg. Here's a good one. What advice do you have for young writers who are struggling to start writing? Honestly, write fanfic. Like, I know that some people really like rag on fanfic, but I'm pro fanfic, honestly, obviously, because I wrote it for many years. And it was my gateway drug. I wrote fanfic for 12 years before I even considered writing a novel. Like, it literally didn't occur to me that I was capable of writing a novel. In fact, I negged on myself. I was like, I'll never write a book. Fanfic helps a lot because certain things are already done for you, for better or for worse, but it means that you get to hone in on the stuff that fanfic doesn't do, that you get to actually do in fanfic, like explore characters and be like honest and like understand the characters as they exist in the source material, and then kind of be true to who those characters are. That's actually a good skill. And once you know who your own characters are, you basically do that for your own work. But also it's just fun. There's a built-in community. You can get really good feedback. If you're not into fanfic and you're struggling to write, try writing something else other than novels is what I mean. You could try short stories. You could try poetry, creative nonfiction, journaling. Just kind of, it's all about working the muscle of writing and also cutting yourself breaks. You don't have to have perfect ideas and write beautiful, perfect novels right out the gate. So yeah. And I have videos on like writing habits, and I've got a lot of writing hacks that might help with this as well. So you can try watching some of those. Any tips for picking a pen name? Sure. First thing is, do you want to keep your first name? I did. I like my name, and then Amazon stole it. If not, what kind of first name do you want to use? This is actually really fun because it's like a fantasy thing. It's like, who do I get to be? And then for last names, short and sweet usually works best. And I kind of talked about this in my pen names video, that one of the double-edged swords of pen names is that it's almost xenophobic in some ways, because we tend to pick very Anglo names that are very easy to pronounce. I'm guilty of this, but I'm also English, Irish, and Scottish, so I literally wrote a list of family names that I don't use because they're not my legal name, and I picked one of them. So Dunn is a family name. So that was my way of kind of sticking close to my roots, honoring my family a little bit. But also all of them were short, sweet, and very British, which is nice. And my legal name is not. But you could also stay in culture, like defy the odds, like still think about spelling and pronunciation. It is honestly a consideration. But pick a different name that's still in your culture. Something that has good ring to it. You always want to Google it. You always want to search it on Amazon to see if anyone is using a similar or same name. Let's see. Is now a bad time to be querying with everything going on? Honestly, it's a good time to be querying. It's a double-edged sword. So I have seen multiple agents and editors, by the way, say they really want to read something, send them something. Editors saying that for agents. And I definitely know, I've seen a few agents being like, hey, I'm stuck at home, time to go through my inbox. Because going through queries does tend to be an at-home thing for most agents. Like, I know this isn't well known, but most agents who work in offices have to do other stuff related to their agent job when they're at the office. So like paperwork, finance, following up with people, etc. And they don't read queries or books at work. Not always. Some of them will have like one day of the week that they go through the queries. A lot of agents, though, go through queries at home. So now that they're stuck at home, I know some of them are clearing their query boxes. I'm helping an AMM mentee query right now, and one of her queries, she got a request yesterday because that agent tweeted that they were at home and they were going through their queries. But the flip of this, I mentioned this earlier, that any agent with a kid is going to have less reading time because they have to do full-time childcare that they don't normally have to do if their kids are in school. So yes and no. I also think certain types of books are going to do very well right now. I think escapist type books are going to do well. If you have, actually, some agents are going to be in the mood for darker stuff. But if you have like a virus as part of your plot or pandemic, it's going to go real 50-50 on whether someone wants to read that. And I'm over here like, people are either going to want to read Brightly Burning or not. FYI, it has a viral pandemic in it. A lot of sci-fi does, though. So that's either going to be good or bad. When everything's on fire, do you want to remind yourself or not? I actually have been watching the pandemic documentary on Netflix, so I'm clearly that kind of person. But at the same time, I'm reading thrillers definitely for escape right now, so I don't have to think about it. And I also did watch a rom-com last night, so I'm doing a bit of both. Yeah, so yes and no, but at the least, agents are all home. So I say query. And also, as I mentioned, editors are going to be able to read more, but won't be able to buy books. So it's a weirdly good time. Also, all these agents can't go to their conferences. So I'm going to say query, definitely query. Oh, okay. I love that you guys have so many questions. I was really worried I'd have nothing to talk about. I haven't even touched my eye makeup, so this is great. I know, right? I'm ancient. Oh, ageism. I really shouldn't joke about age as much as I do. It's really sad, but yeah. And I've aged so much in the last year. Grief ages you, and it's incredibly depressing. Fun fact. Yeah. Oh, my favorite topic. Because it's one of these weird things. It's like alchemy. Time travel's the same, by the way. A thing that does so well in other mediums and just has never taken off in traditional publishing, particularly YA. I can't explain it. I can just tell you what it is. It can work. Some books come out, and in fact, superheroes are a lot like other types of sci-fi, like space books. If you wait 3 or 4 years, sometimes 5 or 6, there will be a microtrend, and like 4 or 5 books will come out, but then none of them will break out and the cycle starts anew. So actually 2020 is a superhero microtrend, which means they sold in 2018 and 2019. There are 4 or 5 coming out. The thing is, if none of them break out, which I don't expect any of them to do, I'm sorry to say, trend starts anew. Also, most of the ones that are coming out this year are by established authors, not debuts. That said, it's better to have them than not to have them, which is good. The outlier, so like meaning the outliers suck. I mean, it's good for the readers, but they give false hope to debuts. I can't explain it. They've never done well in YA. I can name so many titles. And like, thing is, people are always like, Alexa talks at her ass and is like, thinks she's such an expert. I look up sales numbers. My agent is amazing and I love her. She looks at books for me on BookScan all the time. So for those who are unfamiliar, BookScan is a tool. It's actually not entirely accurate because not all bookstores report to BookScan, but it gives you an idea of how things are doing. So if any of you are published by Amazon, or just if you're published and you have an Amazon Author Central account, so the NPD Nielsen BookScan tab, so if you're self-published, you have access to this too, I believe. That is basically the public version of BookScan, which agents and publishers pay to have like a special professional version, and it has slightly more accurate numbers in it. But basically, BookScan is how we track how books are selling. And when you actually look up books on BookScan, it's really, really fascinating because you can see a ton of hype for a title and really think that something's doing super well. And then you look at the actual sales and you feel gaslit by publishing. I'm here to tell you that publishing's gaslighting you all the time. So some of these titles that you see, you're like, famous author sold this. Well, if you look up the numbers, those books sold less well than other books of theirs, etc. And so internally, publishing then has the conversation saying, well, these books don't sell, so they're not going to invest in new ones. And that's kind of the cycle that happens. And unfortunately, it disproportionately affects sci-fi subgenres and tropes because we can't have nice things and everything sucks. So I have feelings about that. I mean, I have a whole video about that. I have lots of theories about that. But I also think specifically superheroes and superpowers is a very visual medium, and I think that impacts novels. I also have another theory, but we're not going to ramble about that. Sorry, catching up on your questions. Oh, I'm gonna mea culpa. The reason you haven't seen an episode of Novelty is because I am responsible for editing the last episode of Novelty, and I have been so overwhelmed with everything that I haven't finished editing it. It's an hour and 30 minutes of footage. It takes forever, and between my revision, deadline, author mentor match, the choices I make, my book coming out, and continuing to film and upload for this YouTube channel, it's 100% my fault that the next episode of Novelty has not been posted. We have that one that just has to be edited and another one ready to go after it. It's my fault. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's me. Yeah, guilty. What are the best and worst parts about querying, but also have you tried the Tati Beauty Blendiful? I haven't tried the Blendiful. I really thought about it, and I still might buy one because I actually am tempted by the mini. That's something that I would probably want to put in my purse because I have an old Bare Minerals compact, blotting powder that the little pad thing got so gross I had to throw it out. So I've actually thought about getting the Blendiful just for the mini, and I haven't done it yet. But I will say, I have it here. Let me pull it out of the sleeping cat. I love this. Oh, look how dirty it is. This is the one problem. Legitimately amazing product. This is such a good palette. And if anyone is on the fence about a palette, I genuinely do recommend this as a good entry level kind of neutral to glam beauty palette. This is one of my favorite buys in the last 6 months. And I guess we might as well throw shade because compare it to Makeup Geek. I got really hyped about this and I bought a palette. does not blend as nicely as I want it to. And I watched this one video by a beauty tuber who was like, it's so pigmented. In her video, it looks amazing. I don't find these shades go on easy at all. So YouTube is full of lies. But Tati is the real deal on that palette. And I'm not even a super fan. I just ended up really liking that palette. Here, talk about myself some more. It's great. Do you have an idea for your next book? Yes, I've already started my next book. I have 12K of it, and I have it loosely outlined. Loose. Like, I know what happens in the third act, but the second act is a little fuzzy. What else is new? And it's going to be my proposal for my option for my publisher. So as soon as I turn in the IVs and get that accepted and approved, I will start working on it. It's another YA thriller. It's set in a small town. I'm doing small town secrets, which is one of my favorite tropes. And I'm really excited to work on it. It's honestly, I mentioned this in my last video, it is my therapy book. The main character has lost her mother, and so I'm working out feelings. It's going to be really fun. I'm honestly really jazzed. And then I have 2 adult thrillers that I'm working on. Early stages, trying to plot it backwards. So for one of them, actually for both of them, I need to figure out the third act climax before I really work on it. Plus, I want to write the YA one first. Sorry, just catching up on your questions. This is where it would be so nice to have another person in the chat, which I will have on March 28th when I do my live stream. I'm really excited about that. It's just an idea that popped into my head. I felt really bad for all these authors with their events being canceled. I know how stressful it is when you're a debut. I was lucky to do a ton of events, and I can't imagine just having that pulled out from under you. So a couple of the people I'm going to have join me are debuts, which will be nice. You can learn about some new books, and we're going to talk about stuff. And then I just have some friends of mine. Rosie Thor is going to join, and I'm really excited because Sanya Menon is going to be on the live stream. Fun fact for you, she loves YouTube. She watches AuthorTube. She's like out there creeping on our videos. So she's really awesome. I've met her a ton of times in person, and we're friendly, and I adore her. So that's going to be really, really fun. And if there's stuff that you want me to do on the March 28th live stream, talk about, let me know. I'm still kind of planning that out. It's going to be like a mix between formal and informal. I don't want to over plan it. And I also assume you guys will have questions. So that should be pretty cool. Oh, I can answer this one. Well, actually, got some, how do I answer? We're gonna do the easy one first. Okay. Is it okay to have different time periods with time travel in one book, or is it too confusing for the reader? No, it's totally okay, because readers of time travel who will actually pick up that book should be seasoned in the category, and in fact will expect you to take your character on multiple romps or adventures to different times, unless the concept, and this is fine too, is more like Outlander, where someone gets trapped in a time. Both are completely accepted conventions. Now, your job, this is why, I mean, time travel is hard logically. It's one of the harder things to write, but also you are expected to research multiple times. They need to feel fully immersive. And so the hard part isn't so much that the readers are confused, but that it's your job to make every time period work, and you have to know it well. You should be doing research if you're writing time travel. It's a lot like writing a historical, but also you need to realistically process the things that would happen, and then how your character, who's usually coming from a modern lens, would react to things, how that modern character would blend in or not, and what kind of conflicts that might create. How they might use modern knowledge to survive in the past. So you could totally do it. You definitely have a lot of work ahead of you. So this one, what's your favorite animated TV show? And did you watch any other anime besides Avatar? So here's the thing, I've never seen Avatar. Like, I'm a terrible person. Hi. I have friends who are diehard fans, and so it's through them that I know that all of these YA novels have basically copied Avatar, and I know that I should watch it. Honestly, lately, I've only done kind of the adult anime stuff, meaning I love BoJack Horseman, Big Mouth, like kind of those Netflix shows. I was honestly never a massive animated series person, though I did go through a Family Guy phase before it was popular, because I'm a TV hipster. I owned the DVDs back in the day, you know, that period where it was like canceled and off the air, like that's how old I am. But generally, I'm not a massive animated series fan. Mostly just because of time. Oh, I do like My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, though. There's so much TV to watch, and there's just so little time. So I tend to gravitate more toward half-hour comedies and dramas with actors. Of course, animated series have actors, they're just voice actors. But I like the adult ones on Netflix. BoJack Horseman made me weep so often. It was so good. It's dark, but good. Here's a good question. I don't know if I can answer it. Is there something you wish you knew about traditional publishing before you started querying? I knew a lot before I started querying because I'm crazy. I did a lot of research, and part of the reason I have this YouTube channel and I like to share is because I had learned all this stuff. That is technically available to learn, but it's not all in one place. And so one of the reasons I do this is because it's like I want you to have the knowledge. And so I went in being pretty realistic, to like ranging to like pessimistic in some ways. I guess the one thing that I have learned that, I mean, even if I'd know and I don't, point is, it's always going to be the one thing that you really want, even if you don't admit it to yourself, that you will not get from publishing, specifically traditionally publishing, but just generally publishing. And it's going to hurt the most, and you almost can't prepare for it. But maybe you should. I had a couple secret hopes and aspirations that I've definitely not gotten, and it bothers me more than I like. And I kind of wish I'd prepared emotionally for it, but at the same time, like I said, I don't know if I could have. Things like, you know, secretly hoping for a starred trade review. No, hasn't happened. It's fine. Whatever. Publishing's rough. But really, the feelings, you have to be prepared for the roller coaster of feelings. And then there's always moving goalposts, and there's always going to be something else that you want, and you'll probably never be satisfied. So, yeah, it's a lot. Let's see. Here, this is good. What is the best technique to avoid having too much dialogue and more description? So first of all, if you tend toward dialogue first, don't fight your instincts. It might mean that you're very good at dialogue. In your first draft, write the way you write. Your job in editing is, it's all about action tags and avoiding white room syndrome. Most often when you have too much dialogue, this is what you're going to have, where people talk at each other, and maybe you have a ton of dialogue tags like he said, she said, or maybe you even have descriptive dialogue tags, which can get really fanficky. You can't whisper or shout everything or like arch your eyebrows at everything. That said, convert actions into action tags. So you basically learn, I've taught myself this because I'm from fanfic. I've always been very dialogue first. To create a visual picture through a dialogue scene. Your job, once you've vomited the dialogue out, it's not just how people say things, it's what they do as they're talking, and using what they do as they're talking to actually more accurately depict how they're feeling, what they're saying, so that you can cut down on telling in those dialogue tags and action tags. Think about physical things like how a character is carrying themselves. Do they move in the space? If things are too static, can you literally change the setting of the conversation? Can they walk outside while they're talking? So it's kind of like creating those spaces between lines of dialogue, but also understanding sometimes you do want the dialogue to be fluid with very little breaking it up. And where are the natural pauses within your dialogue scene where you can let the reader orient themselves with what a character is feeling or doing. So it's kind of learning to beef things up, but also, of course, cut unnecessary dialogue. Look for places where sentiment is repeated. If the same piece of information is being repeated more than once, you usually need to cut one of them. You can also cut filler. There are things that you might on first instinct to write out that a character doesn't need to do. For example, most of us like don't refer to people's names all the times, and I've done this where it's like this instinct to be like, use their name all the time. You can cut a bunch of those. You can cut transitional words that we do indeed say. It's realistic to say like, yeah, I don't know, of course, so, but you can still trim some of those to make the dialogue crisper and a bit more effective. Those are some tips to kind of like create balance and make that better. Still reading. I'm such, like, yes, I read poetry. So funnily enough, the poetry I read is by teenage girls because at Right Girl, everyone loves poetry. Right Girl loves poetry. We do poetry all the time. So usually I'm reading poetry of teen girls. It's annoyingly good. They're better than I am at a lot of things. But I think only particularly kind of soulful people hold on to a love of poetry into adulthood. And like, I mean that as a compliment, whereas I find like it's really common to love poetry as a teenager, particularly a teenage girl. I've started to make that about gender, but I've observed that in Right Girl. So meaning I loved poetry a lot more as a teenage girl. So my favorites are old school. When I was a teenager, I adored Sylvia Plath. Adored. So emo, read The Bell Jar. It's good, but her poetry is amazing too. And Thomas Hardy, I enjoy Thomas Hardy, period. I love Tess of the D'Urbervilles. But Thomas Hardy wrote some great ass poetry. So that's kind of how I'm going to go. I know that's not modern. Oh, and E.E. Cummings. Who doesn't like E.E. Cummings? Oh, and there was one specific poem that I adored in school, and it was by Eleanor Wiley, I want to say. It's called Sea Lullaby. That was my favorite poem in high school. Look it up. It's about a child dying, and it's really beautiful. I had to recite it in class, and so I've always liked that. So yeah, I think it's a natural thing to love poetry when you're a teen. I wrote some abysmally horrible poetry about the boy I had a crush on because I was emo. Glad I got over that. I hope it could be in a box somewhere at home, but I hope I burned it. So I have two answers to this question. Do you think anyone can become a writer and get a book published? Yes and no. I think anyone can theoretically become a writer and get a book published, meaning anyone who wants to, who puts in the work, who develops their toolkit. There's still time and luck involved, but meaning I think that engineers can 100% become writers and publish books. They do. I have a couple friends who started more in the sciences on like the engineering or tech writing side, and they're writers. I do think it can be a tougher climb. Some of those friends of mine, they've had to work harder to overcome telling in their writing because obviously there's more technical writing in certain fields, straightforward direct writing. But also they can have a very refreshing, different way of writing, which can also work to your benefit. Not everyone likes flowery, over-the-top writing. So meaning I think anyone is capable of it. Like your background is never going to preclude you from becoming a writer. That's what I want to say. But can anyone, literally anyone, become a writer and get a book published? No, just because more people want to write than actually write. More people want to write than complete projects. Most people give up, is what I'm meaning to say. And also, there's just not enough room, particularly, let's say, traditional publishing. There's simply not enough room. That's why there's gatekeepers. So no, it's not anyone can do it. Anyone could certainly self-publish and put in the work to become successful, but luck and timing are part of it. So like, yes and no. Meaning I'm not pie in the sky enough to say anyone can be a writer. It's not strictly true. But I don't think background precludes someone from working hard and being talented and improving their skills. Writing is a muscle. You can develop it. So, yeah. Both. Is it good or bad to subvert expectations in novels, bending tropes, etc.? Both. It's good because tropes are beloved for a reason, and they can become boring. And you should be trying to do something a little bit different with tropes. That's how you... When I say that no idea is original, this is what I mean. Ideas are a dime a dozen. Execution is what matters. So it's taking tropes and like doing interesting things with them where it can be bad. You need to know your genre really, really well. And you need to understand why people love things and why people love tropes. And there are certain things you don't subvert unless you want to alienate the entire audience. So for example, in romance, don't get rid of that happily ever after. Romance fans will hate you, and also it's no longer a romance. It's kind of understanding kind of the history and mechanics of something and why people love it, and not subverting the thing that makes people like it. That's the best way to put it. Yes. I think fanfic's amazing for frankly anyone, but particularly for young people. Absolutely. I'm biased, of course, because I come from fanfiction. Fanfiction was a really safe space for me in which to explore story tropes, character archetypes, romance. I mean, it's all about shipping, right? In a safe space with a community who wanted to read that material. You have a built-in audience because fans want to read fanfic. And it's like safe to fail in those spaces also because you rarely fail because people are pretty happy to read almost anything. And it's also a safe space because you're not publishing, you're not technically publishing, so you're not going to end up being like 30 years old and go, why did I self-publish that when I was 16 and be embarrassed? It's nice. It tends to disappear into the back ends of the internet, which is really, really nice. Yeah. And generally, I don't think anyone should have to spend money to refine their writing skills. I really prickle at people who take advantage of young, not just young, but just desperate writers where they like bamboozle them out of money. Money is money. Writing is 100% a skill that you can develop without any funds. I don't think that improving writing, getting good at writing, and publishing, selling books should be the domain of people with money. While they do have many advantages and are pretty deeply entrenched, I really prickle at that idea. So yeah, it's definitely a reason fanfic is amazing. It's a training ground for writers for a reason. This one might be hard to answer, but I'm going to try. How do you create conflicts and subplots to make the story interesting when what the story is actually about itself can't always move the story forward at the time? This is why you need romance. Subplots, basically. It doesn't have to be romance, but romance is a very good one because romance can technically stand still. Your characters might not go anywhere. You might not be able to progress your A plot, which is going to be your main plot, but you can add all sorts of micro conflicts into a B plot. Usually a B plot is romance, but it could be a friend. It could be, there are all sorts of little conflicts you can insert. So insert interpersonal character related conflict if you can't literally move the plot forward. I'm also going to warn you, though, ultimately, at the end of the day, some readers will not like that it's not as fast-paced as they would like, but there's all kinds of novels, and they just have to deal with it. But I'm a fan of character drama, so that's why I'm cool with it. How/when did you know that you wanted to be a writer? Cliche writer answer, always JK, but not really. I think most of us knew a long time ago. It's a cliche answer. Oh, I've always wanted to be a writer. But I think it changes. So in fairness, my mother's job, she was an editor, like B2B, business to business. She did trade stuff. But meaning I grew up in a household with someone who worked in an adjacent industry, who always encouraged me to write. My grandfather also kind of did editorial type stuff. And so I was encouraged, so it was like in front of my face. But that's the thing. I wanted to be a journalist. I didn't know I wanted to be a novelist until I was like 26. So meaning I always wanted to be a writer, but I was stuck on journalism for a really long time. And I figured that out in high school, technically. Before that, I was kind of like, what do I want to do? Do I want to be a doctor? That was an interesting period, and kind of wish I had. But I landed on journalism when I was 15 or 16. And what I liked about it was a very practical way to turn writing into a job, though I have feelings about that. And I felt it suited my writing style, which is very kind of, I'm not flowery. So I guess technically I knew I wanted to be a professional writer since I was a teenager, but I didn't know I wanted to be a novelist until I was like 26 years old. And I was writing the whole time. Like I used to write Babysitter's Club books when I was like 8. So we all do it. We all do that early kind of fanfic that we don't know is fanfic. I'll also try to answer this one. Approach to building character interactions without it feeling contrived, especially if the novel isn't too plot heavy. In essence, how thin is the line between necessary filler and just plain filler? So you shouldn't have filler. Every conversation and interaction should feed the plot. I know that's hard. And if you don't have enough plot, you need more plot. Think about B plots, think about subplots, conflicts, little interpersonal conflicts, meaning every conversation should have a goal. of what it's doing. And it should somehow connect to other parts of the book. So, for example, in the Ivies, my YA thriller, if I have my girls having a conversation, the things that I actually had to do this in my revision, I was like, I need them to talk. But what the heck are they going to talk about? It couldn't be just filler, especially because it's an act 2. It actually has to be important. I was like, okay, well, what can they talk about? And I thought about topics that would both be realistic topics that teen girls who are friends would talk about, but that it would also help my plot. And I wrote out a list of potential topics they could maybe organically talk about that would enable me to have them talk about things related to college admissions, parental pressures, specific other characters in the story, etc. So it shouldn't be filler. Every conversation in a novel should have a goal. Not in real life. That's not how real life works. But in a novel, every single scene has to have a point. And it's hard, and you might not always get it in your first draft, but it's something to work on in editing for sure, especially in a thriller. I mean, in fairness, that's very much a genre thing. I have not read Ninth House yet. I'm pretty deeply entrenched in adult thrillers, and I guess some YA. It's like when I get on a genre kick, it's really hard to get out of it. Oh, Marie, hi. I love you. You're so great. We need to write. God. Although now we can't leave our house. So anyway. I love Marie. If you don't follow Marie, go follow her channel. She's great. She's way smarter than me and reads really smart books. Question, more on a YA adult and adult YA crossover. I'm definitely going to do a video on this. I've started outlining it, but we can talk a bit about it. I have so many feelings. It's really hard because people are always asking me, what is YA? Like, what are these definitions? And there are pretty hard and fast definitions, and they don't change, and I will yell about them. I can see a book and tell you that it's not YA, but here's the thing that's happened that is frustrating, but it is the way it is. So YA basically pushed all lower YA out of the category. So that's the lighter YA, things like Ella Enchanted, Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, books like that cannot be published now as YA. I'm hoping it's going to change, though. I've noticed a couple little things, but for at least the last 5 or 6 years, just now. And upper middle grade has really evolved as a category to try to fill that space, but I would argue that it's not adequately filling the space left behind by the lack of lower YA. Meanwhile, YA has pushed up and up and up, as we all know. And we have more and more crossovers. And what's interesting about crossovers, it's really hard to talk about them to you to give you advice, because every single one that has sold and come out, it's kind of like, even the agents and the writers didn't necessarily know that they could definitely sell this thing. They just kind of did their best. And sometimes publishing buys them and sometimes publishing doesn't. And it really, really depends. Though I will say a lot of the people getting away with them are established YA authors, but there's still some debuts. So it's really tricky. Essentially, YA crossover, they're edgier, darker, older-leaning YA to satisfy the core adult readership of YA. And they're really hit or miss, to be honest. I can tell you that my friends who work in bookstores say that teenagers don't buy them. So they really do exist for adults. And I think this brings up the question of who is YA for, which is very interesting. Gosh, it's hard to talk about. I haven't collected all my thoughts because I'm still working on my outline. Maybe some more of you will have questions as I scroll through based on what I've already said. But yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, it's publishing doesn't quite know what it's doing and it's still figuring it out. I think what's going to be more interesting is whether or not, I think adult needs to change is actually what I think. I think adult needs to start serving millennial readers more than it has in the past. It was so deeply entrenched in serving boomers for such a long time, but boomers and millennials have very different reading tastes, partly informed by the rise of YA. And I think we're going to see more and more of the adult changing, and then that'll trickle to impact YA. I think we're going to see 5 to 10 years of real transition in terms of marketing categories and books, for better or for worse. Who have you told your pen name book titles to? Is it a secret? Are you pretty open? I'm super open, honestly. The only reason I have division is that it made it easier, a little easier to divide. I don't keep it a secret. It makes Google easier. It's an easier name to spell. But yeah, I don't keep it a secret at all. Not everyone in my personal life knows because they just don't pay attention. I almost never self-promo on my Facebook page because I hate self-promo like that. Like my personal Facebook page, I don't have an author Facebook page. Yeah, I don't really keep it secret. I have a fun story about this though, really funny. And it's possible the person involved is watching, which I would be tickled. I got a text last night from my cousin's wife, who is a teacher. And she said, one of my students loves your books and would love something signed. So I said, of course, I'm going to send her something. And she texted me again this morning and said, oh, my student sent me this, like finding out like how her student figured out that her teacher knew me. Her mom is a fan of this channel. Hello, Elizabeth, if you're watching. And she watched my pen name video and she heard me say, oh, I have a long Italian last name. And my high school principal used to call me DiGiorno on the announcements. And it was really embarrassing. And she thought, I wonder if her name is insert name, the same as my child's teacher. It's a long Italian last name. And so they asked if she was related to me, and she is. So I just thought that was hilarious. Go figure that her daughter's teacher is my cousin's wife. So I thought that was really, really funny. Of all the Italian names. So yeah, that was really amusing to me. So I don't keep it a secret, but I'm obviously not like telling all of you my name flat out, only just because it's a little bit easier because I do have a professional life under my name, but I'm not hiding it. Yeah. Oh, babies. Okay. Any advice for people who are going to get rejected from all their reaches? Okay. Yeah. It's, I'm not going to lie to you. You're going to nurse that bitterness forever. I mean, maybe you won't if you're a better person than I am. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt in the moment. And then it's going to hurt. I'm 36 years old and I'm still a little bitter about a few of my reaches who rejected me. And it's worse now. In the moment, process the feelings, have a support system, maybe even talk to your parents or friends ahead of time. Like tell them like after something happens, like don't remind me all the time about it. Say like on the day that you get it's not a letter anymore. I'm so old. On the day that you get the email, say to your nearest and dearest friends or parents or what have you, that you need to do, of course we're in quarantine, you need to do something really fun and distracting is my point. And since you can't leave your house because of coronavirus, watch your favorite movie, order pizza if that's still happening. So just kind of surround yourself with goodness and happiness and distractions. And then take a deep breath. Hopefully you've gotten into some of your matches/safeties. And so it's good to have something good to look forward to because at the same time that you're receiving rejections, you're hopefully receiving acceptances. And it's about focusing all your attentions on the place that you can go or are going to, because it's going to have great things about it. And then you get to be bitter and have a chip on your shoulder forever about the reaches that rejected you. And you'll hold that close to your heart and it will keep you warm. I still throw shade at the schools that rejected me. I'm 36 years old, so their loss. I don't want to go into debt for them anyway. Oh, here's a cat. This is Teddy. Here, I'll hide the question so you can see my cat. Yes. He's like, what are you doing right now? He's so confused. Anyway, all right. What's next? Here's a nice meta question. How long did it take you on YouTube to start really picking up subscribers? A long time. YouTube is so weird. It takes forever to get to certain milestones and then no time at all to bust past them. But only if YouTube decides that it likes you and their favor varies. I am currently not in favor with the YouTube algorithm. I can always tell when they're pushing certain videos of mine because I get more comments on them and my subscribers go up faster. I'm currently in a lull period where YouTube is not pushing my videos, but they were in like January. I can always tell. So it took me, I could look up the actual stats, but I think it took me 10 or 11 months to get to 1,000 subscribers. Yeah, this is like literally 3 weeks before they changed the rules about monetization, and they changed them. Like I had just gotten monetization anyway, but then they changed them and I would have qualified, thankfully. And they changed monetization rules in February of 2018. So I must have hit 1,000 a few weeks before that. And I started my channel in June 2017. And then it was kind of like decent steady growth. I think I have looked this up at one point. I think I was at about 8,000 subscribers when I posted my harsh writing advice video. And that is the video that totally changed for me, because it was the first video. Well, it wasn't the first video. YouTube really liked my amateur writing mistakes video. They promoted that one a lot. They don't anymore. YouTube algorithm latched on to my harsh writing advice video in September of 2018, and I had about 8,000 subscribers. And the only way that I got to 8,000 subscribers, by the way, in May of 2018, when my book came out, Kat and Christine and Jesse shouted me out on their channels. Specifically, Christine and Kat shouted me out outside of publisher promo. And I saw a huge uptick when they talked about me in their videos. That was actually the first big push for my growth in that springtime. So it was like that point between like 1,000 and like 5,000, like the jump up was definitely them. So then my harsh writing advice video, YouTube just liked it. And between September and December of 2018, I think I got to 20,000 subscribers. YouTube giveth and YouTube taketh away, but they've treated me pretty nicely. I think I was at, before this fall, I think I was under 30,000. I think I was at like between 25 and 30,000. Maybe, no, I was maybe at 30,000. And then I posted the DOA genres video. And again, they just happened to like that video. And now I'm at 62,000, 63. I'm at 62,000, but it's slowed down again. So it's like dribs and drabs of when YouTube likes my videos. I will say, if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, subscribe, because most people who watch my videos don't subscribe, and like you could subscribe if you want. That'd be fun. Because like my normal videos that YouTube doesn't latch onto get a very normal amount of views. Like my subscribers watch them, but it's a very rare video that YouTube itself decides to promote. Growth isn't weird. How do you get over imposter syndrome when posting writing advice, assuming that's a thing you deal with? I do, but less so now than before. I honestly was very strategic. I purposefully did not start this channel or really give writing advice until I knew that I had a leg to stand on. This was my personal choice, mostly just because my advice heroes were Susan Dennard and Beth Revis, and they were so far ahead of me in terms of like their success. They had like proven their success. And so I decided for myself, definitely wanted to make sure I had a really good agent, and definitely wanted to make sure I had a book deal before I started posting advice in earnest. And with Brightly Burning, it was before I had sold it that I started posting to Wattpad, but I was so close. I was confident that I was going to sell the book. And then Wattpad just didn't, I wasn't getting the engagement that I wanted. And so I started this channel a month after I got my book deal. So I waited, and that helps a lot with the imposter syndrome on the publishing advice side, because I knew that I had something to talk about. I've been doing this, trying to be published since 2011. That's a lot of years of research. That's a lot of years of contests and like talking to people and being on publishing Twitter. And then also my social networks have exponentially expanded over the years, and even since I started this channel. And so what helps me with imposter syndrome, again, with publishing advice, is I don't talk about things that I'm not pretty confident about. And part of what helps me be confident, I ask people questions all the time. So before I talk about a topic to you guys, I'll talk to 5 of my friends who are going to have different experiences than I do, just because they're different people with different books and different agents. And I'll sanity check myself, like, am I crazy that this is a thing? Or like, how is this for you? So like, I've lost my editor and a publishing house, but my experience is very different from other friends whose editors who have left. So I talk to people and I gather a variety of experiences before I decide to talk about a topic. And so it's like this like common, like amalgam, I'm bad at words. It's a combination of everyone's experiences. It's also why I can give examples that I anonymize. I'm not saying people's names and like spilling people's information. That helps me on that side. Craft. I have experienced so much imposter syndrome on craft videos, and I still do, because I don't consider craft my strong suit. I think I'm a decent writer. Like genuinely, I'm not being falsely humble. I'm okay. I don't think I'm a great master of writing, of language, of words. I'm okay at some things, and I'll talk more confidently about the things I think are my strengths. I can actually talk decently confidently about my weaknesses because I've had to try to fix them. I can talk about that. But there's some things I feel really, really insecure about talking about. And so some of those topics I've literally just not made videos. You guys will request them. I'm like, you don't want me to talk about that. Yeah. There's a reason I haven't made a video about endings yet. I've done a video on beginnings. I've done a video on middles. And I haven't done one on endings because I don't think I've yet mastered how to write a good ending. Maybe on the Ivies I'll finally get good at it, but I don't think they're my strong suit. And if you've read my books, you might agree with me. Some people definitely agree. I know a good ending when I see it, but can I execute one? We'll see. So meaning this is the kind of stuff I struggle with. There's certain topics where I'm just like, my anxiety will eat me alive if I film, edit, and post certain types of videos, so I just don't post them. Because sometimes mean comments hurt my feelings. I don't know. So yeah, yes, I do deal with it. And sometimes it's like, don't post it. Other times I will do supplemental research so that I feel a little bit more secure in the topic I'm talking about, and then I'll still mess it up. I made some mistakes in my passive voice video, and I was like, screw you, I'm not going to make craft videos anymore. I still do, but not on stuff I hate. Like, I am not the person to make any video about grammar. I have excellent grammar, I think. But I can't teach any of it because I don't know what things are called. I'm terrible at explaining things. Yeah. Maybe if I had like an English degree, I'd be better at it, but I'm not. Just throw this up briefly. I know, right? It's a popular trope in science fiction, and it's something that's always fascinated me, and actually living it really, really sucks. Yeah, take care of yourselves, everyone. And also just, thank you. I love to hear that. Oh, just in case you joined late, this question, I actually recommend you query. I covered this a little earlier. Depending on the book, if your book is like really dark and won't be a good escape read, it might not be a good time, but honestly, a lot of agents are actually reading their queries right now. So I actually think it might be a good time to query. They also can't go to any events. Usually the spring season is tough because agents are traveling, and now they can't. So they have to read something, right? All right, this is a good one. Where do you even start looking for an agent? I do have a video on this that you can watch. It's a little old, so I might be a little stiff, so maybe I need to make a new one. But generally, how do you find an agent? Start with the books that you like that are similar to your book. If you have them on the shelf, look at them. Otherwise, maybe you don't want to go to a bookstore right now. Awkward. But no, I've literally just gone to bookstores, picked books off the shelf that I felt were similar to mine. This was years ago, and looked at the acknowledgments. At the back of every book, authors write acknowledgments. And 95% of the time, they're going to thank their literary agent. If they don't, it's a little weird, to be honest. They usually do. And if not, you can also Google literary agent author name, and it'll usually come up. Or you can look at the deal announcements if you have Publishers Weekly, which is actually not Publishers Weekly, Publishers Marketplace. If you're really in a pinch, you can pay for a tool called Publishers Marketplace. I don't recommend it as a first port of call because it's expensive. I do have it, but I never had it before I queried. But point is, look in the back of books, see whose agents they think, and then look them up on Google. That's one way. Another way, there's a website called Manuscript Wishlist that has agents and also some editors, but mostly agents and what they're looking for in books. You can browse that. Always double check the agents you do find on there. You have to do your due diligence and research to make sure they're actually good agents. I do have multiple videos on what makes a good agent versus bad / mediocre agents / schmagents. I have so many videos on that because this is the topic I will talk about till I die, until you guys listen to me. So that's a good one for you to watch because that'll help you weed out people who maybe aren't good agents, because anyone can call themselves an agent. Twitter is another good place. There are a lot of popular agents on Twitter, so you can look up some of your favorite authors and then see who their agents are and follow them on Twitter. You can follow contests on Twitter, things like DV Pit or PitMad, and like see some of the agent names that come up. Again, do your research. There's some very shady agents who are prolific on Twitter. Those are some of my best suggestions to start. Favorite book boyfriend. I'm sure I have multiple, but I'm just going to be really lame and say Darcy. Why not? It's a classic for a reason. Although I guess in the Austen canon, I think Wentworth is probably the most stable Austen dude. But to that end, he kind of lacks personality, which I discovered. Like, it's comforting and lovely, and he's great for Anne. But when you think about it, Darcy's the most dynamic. Also rich. Yeah. Here, I'll give you an interesting answer on this one. How do you get the right agent? You do the best you can and hope you get lucky. This is both probably going to ratchet up your anxiety, but also hopefully make you feel better. There's only so much research you can do ahead of time. There's only so much you can know about agents before you query them. And there's definitely only so much you can know before you talk to them on the phone if they offer to you, and then before you work with them. Do the best you can. Try to rule out bad agents for sure. Don't even query them. Don't waste your time. Don't do it. Please, I beg you, don't do it. Then if you get an offer, if an agent is interested in working with you, just have a phone call. Go in with an open mind. Try not to be too nervous yourself. Hopefully they're not too nervous. Sometimes that first conversation isn't perfect because, believe it or not, agents get nervous too on the phone. But keep an open mind. Do your best. Talk to clients when you have an offer, like talk to people about what it's like working with the agent, both current clients who have sold, who haven't sold, and if you can, clients who have left that agent. That's a tricky one, but some people do that. I'll admit I didn't talk to any clients when I signed with my agent. I love jumping off cliffs, but also because I was not going to bother Curacast, to be perfectly honest. It was the only client I could really talk to at the time because my agent has such a small list. It's like, I'm not going to bother her. So that's the thing. I had a pretty good sense of my agent before I signed with her. And then I really got a good sense of my agent once I started working with her. And I was like, oh my God, she's perfect and I adore her. Sometimes when you start working with an agent, you don't have that. You go, oh no, we're not actually a fit in XYZ ways. And you can't know it ahead of time. And it's not your fault. It's not their fault. And it's totally okay to leave an agent. And once you've had an agent, you'll know what you want in an agent. And you'll also have a much better sense of figuring out what agents are actually like, but also you'll make more publishing friends and you'll have more people you can talk to about what agents are like. So it's a double-edged sword because there's only so much you can do ahead of time before getting an agent. So do your research, but also take a deep breath. You can't predict everything or plan everything. So I have a video on this. For the time being, no. I have no plans on becoming a full-time author. Would I consider it? If I'm making millions of dollars, yes. The odds of that are just so slim to none. I go over it in the video, but I live in a high cost of living place. I also have extreme anxiety about money and stability. It's because of the way I grew up. And so I would have so much anxiety and stress about how to pay my rent and health insurance because I live here, US, that it would ruin all of my creative energy, and I probably would be incapable of writing books, and then I'd end up hating writing and be miserable and burn out. I'd rather have my day job and be able to have all my headspace clear to write. So currently this balance that I have of having a good day job with a salary and health insurance is really working for me. So if I make millions of dollars, yes, I will consider becoming a full-time author. I also really hope the United States fixes its healthcare because that's the real barrier to entry for me. So yeah. If I lived in the UK, yeah, I'd be a full-time author. When do you give up on traditionally publishing a book? This is similar to the earlier question about when do you give up on querying. It depends. In that answer, I said could be 50 agents, it could be 75 agents, it could be 100, it could be time. Could be a year, could be a year and a half, could be 2 years. I think it's always dependent on what you have up your sleeve. Very often giving up on traditionally publishing a specific book is because you have a new book that you want to focus on, which is why it's always good to work on something else, because not having something work out always feels terrible, but nothing is better for failure, in quote marks, than having something else to focus on. Hope is what gets you through. So I'd say definitely if the overwhelming message that, oh, if you're new, I don't have coronavirus, I just have a deviated septum and a constantly runny nose. If you've just gotten really overwhelming, consistent feedback, including just farm rejections, no's, across the board. And traditional publishing is basically telling you no. And you know that the agents are good and you know that they're appropriate for your book. if you're getting form rejections and you're not even getting requests, it might not even be specifically that your book is wrong for the market. It might be the book itself. And it's more a matter of going into the writing and the editing to fix that problem than giving up on traditionally publishing it. Though you might have to if it's just not there yet. There's so many things that go into it. And the long story short is that I think it's almost always best to just write another book and try again. Because I will say, I know that this is definitely only my personal opinion, and that I am more hardline than some people are. But a lot of the time, not always, a lot of the time, if traditional publishing, if all the gatekeepers are telling you no, the book probably shouldn't be published at all. So it's a matter of moving on to a new book to try to traditionally publish it. Not always. Sometimes traditional publishing is just not open to a subgenre, and yes, it's a good idea to self-publish it. But a lot of the time, I know that I'm going to shut up because I know a lot of people disagree with me, but it depends on your goals. As I've said, my goal was to be traditionally published, so I threw away 2 books, even though I loved them, and I still kind of love them. But I look at them now and I'm like, I know why these didn't work. And I improved so much each time I wrote a book, and it got me to where I am, and I have no regrets. But it definitely varies. It can never hurt to write a new book. You should always improve when you write a new book, and that's always good. I wonder how far behind in all these questions I am. So far behind. I'll answer this one quickly. I just love talking about my agent. I adore my agent. She's amazing. So we are 4 years into our relationship. I signed with her around this time in 2016, and we've sold 3 books together. I mean, really 2 book deals with 3 books. So we've gone through a lot together. We've gone through a lot of rejection together because my first book didn't sell right away. We had to rewrite it. So we've gone through editorial on books together. I've gone through her having a baby. There was a maternity leave in there, which was great. The head of the agency covered me during maternity leave and was amazing to work with. Actually, my agent only took like 6 weeks because she's a hero. But that's the thing. We've been through a lot. I've had issues not selling. I've had issues with editors, nothing crazy, but still, like, my agent is always going to go in there and protect me. She's earned my trust, and I hope I've earned hers. I hope she doesn't think I'm crazy. I worry sometimes. And so we just have a really good relationship. It's, we're friendly. We're friend-ish, but she is my literary agent. It's a business relationship. I'm wary of a business relationship getting too entrenched as like a friendship because the lines can get blurred. We're definitely colleagues in a sense because I'm a very hands-on author. Not all are, but she knows I'm crazy and she really respects that about me, or at least deals with it, meaning I like to know everything. As I mentioned, she looks up numbers on BookScan. We talk about trends. We discuss the market because I really, really enjoy that. So we're definitely business colleagues. It's a business relationship, but I think we like each other. We're pretty friendly. And we've been on texting terms for a year and a half. I text my agent sometimes every day. We go back and forth. We talk about industry stuff. Sometimes it's personal. So I really love her. She's great. And what's nice is that, like, I'm comfortable enough that I can be like my most neurotic self with her, because I can be my most neurotic self with her so that my editor doesn't have to see that and I don't embarrass myself. And I like that. So, the questions jumped again. I keep missing them. I don't like it. There's so many. I'm glad you're asking questions. I definitely just missed them. It's fine. We're going to do more of these. Honestly, as long as I'm quarantined. Well, now I know how StreamYard works, but maybe I'll just do this it doesn't even have to be the weekend because now I'm working from home. This is so depressing. I'll do more of these. Okay, questions. Sorry, it's not entertaining seeing me scroll. Oh, you guys are talking to each other and I adore it. Sorry, I know this is really, really boring. Oh, here, I'll do this one while I keep looking. Any tips for making the waiting period after creating less awful? this is just like submission, and sometimes you can't do anything. So first of all, I tell you that you should write another book, but I'm also going to tell you that I usually can't. When I'm on submission and when I was querying, I wasn't really working on other books because it's too hard. Your brain does kind of get stuck on that thing. Watch TV, like marathon a show that's like really good for you. Sometimes it can be one you've already seen because you already know the emotional response it's going to trigger, and it's the emotional response that you want. Go out with friends, leave the house. You can't right now. So usually my advice, it's all about distraction techniques. And then just literally not so much the waiting period, but when you do get responses, send out more queries. Like focusing on positive things helps a lot, but the actual waiting, read maybe. You just gotta fill the time. And if you're better than me, do write a new project. That's actually the literal best thing you can do, but I'm bad at it. So yeah, it's hypocritical for me to give that advice, but yeah, it's still the best advice. All right. Author 2 recommendations. I do have some. So Lizelle Sambury is also being traditionally published and has some really good videos kind of covering that space. Hold on, I'm going to go to my sub box. I'm going to throw out some names. I like watching Shaylin Wrights. I like Laura Wrights. What's her channel? Like, I know that's her channel name. Yeah, just look up Laura Wrights. I really like her vlogs. I, of course, watch Lainey, my friend Lainey Kress. I watch Kat. When Kat does writing vlogs, I really, really like those. I know that the content isn't quite as often. Another new channel, also hybrid publishing, actually, which is good. Rachel Bateman, look her up. She just started, but she's throwing out some really good topics. I really like her. Oh, I love Courtney. What's her actual channel name? See, I'm in my like sub box. Oh, Bethany Atazeta. I watch her. Let's see. Hold on. I watch Natalia Lee. Kate, of course, Kate Kavanaugh. Not all of these are my style. So if you're looking for channels that are exactly like mine, definitely look at Rachel Bateman and definitely look at Lizelle Sambury because they're doing similar format. Oh, Rebecca McLaughlin is another traditionally published author doing similar videos, but I like to watch not just that kind of content. I also like to watch vlogs and stuff. So I watch like Kate Kavanaugh and whatnot. Let's see. Still in my... And then honestly, I watch so much BookTube. And oh, the Courtney Project. That's what her channel is called. Really good. I'm learning so much about self-publishing, which I just like to watch videos that are things that I don't necessarily already know. Still going through. It's really boring. You just have to watch me scroll through things. You're like, what is wrong with her? It's also very odd talking to myself, and I bet you all my neighbors think I'm crazy. So much BookTube and BeautyTube. I've also recently started watching Hot Ones for Sweet Feast, which is just people being interviewed while eating hot wings. It's kind of great. Not writing, but don't you love how like people ask you something and it's like your entire brain goes blank? Oh, By the Brook. I also like By the Brook's channel. There's more, obviously, but like those are ones I'm throwing out there. Let's see. Keep scrolling. I love that you guys are having conversations. Here's a brief question that I can do. Should you wait to see how an agent goes before querying them? Like someone who's young and new, it's up to you. Yes and no. Sometimes you have no choice because you're querying right now and it's just hedging your bets. And so in that case, it's about looking at the agency that they're at and who's training them. And if the agency is good and the agency has good sales and their mentor is good and their mentor has good sales, I think it's worth taking a chance on the new agent. But the other strategy can be just keeping an eye, like this is good to do when you start writing your project as you're writing. Keep an eye on that new agent because typically it's the 2-year mark when you can really tell how good a new agent is going to be. And so sometimes you do want to watch and let their other clients be guinea pigs to see if they're going to start selling. It's totally up to you, and it's about timing. But sometimes you can't wait and you just have to kind of go for it. Here, should one start by querying their dream agent first, or should they do it in their second round? What if you get an offer of representation before the second round? I'm helping an AMM mentee with this right now. And I was like, okay, this is complicated. So yes and no. You do want to make sure that your query is very good. You want to make sure that your book is in its best possible state. You want to do a test batch for your query and your book, mostly your query. That test batch shouldn't necessarily have your dream agent in it, but it should have a couple of fast responders who are still very good agents. Again, don't query bad agents. And then it's a dance. You send out your first couple of queries. I say 3, 4, maybe even 5. And you see if you get a partial or a full request from those fast responders or rejections. If statistically most of them are rejections, something is wrong with either your query or your pages. You look at them. But if you get requests, partials and fulls, if you are really confident in your manuscript, I honestly say query your dream agent in round 2. You can wait for round 3. So this is by the point you're getting to maybe 10 or 12, 13, 14, 15 agents if you started to hear back from other people. And then, because you know your query works and you know that your material works, upgrading partials to fulls, that kind of things. Those kinds of signs are what you're looking for. Because very often dream agents are more popular, they're more entrenched, they often are the longer responders. They're not the fast responders, not always. And it's a matter of getting into their query queue, because what you don't want to do, it's a dance. It's all a dance. The second you get interest from someone, real interest, I'm talking like you think they want to have a phone call with you, which is either you can watch their Twitter, sometimes they'll tweet about you. That happened to me. Sometimes they email you and say, I'm really loving this, hoping to finish it soon. Or they'll even literally email you and say, I want to have a phone call. Your meter doesn't start running until you actually are on the call and they offer to you. And from that point, you have an offer and it is bad form to query more agents. But in that time where they might want to make an offer is when you send off all your last queries. And if you haven't queried your dream agent yet, you need to do it right then. It's still not going to be great if 48 hours later you go, I have an offer. It's not going to look good. But it's better than querying going, I actually have an offer for this, or querying and waiting 24 hours. That's bad form. It's a dance. It's all a dance. And this is assuming you get that early interest, of course. But that is how I approached it. A couple of my dream agents I did in second round because I knew my query worked already. And I knew they took forever to respond. And I knew that they went chronologically through their inbox. This is all getting Query Tracker Pro and paying attention to trends. And I basically wanted to be in their queue, knowing that because they took forever, that even if I had to revise my book, I could probably revise my book faster than they would get to my query. Isn't that terrible? So it's all strategic, and it depends on who your dream agent is. That's the like kind of long, complicated answer. I think I could answer this one quickly. Do you have experience or stories about writers who have sold their foreign rights and how it works? I can tell you how it works in TradPub. I've only sold to the UK. It is my dream to sell in a foreign territory. 2 books in a row. Sci-fi doesn't do well in the foreign market, and I'm really crossing my fingers for the Ivies. I want an edition in another language. I really want a book in German so desperately. I speak it. I want a book in German. I wanted The Stars We Steal in German. Leonie is literally German, but I digress. There's German in the book, and I hope it's not wrong. How it works. This depends on your agent and your agency, and you can do your research on this before you sign. Some agencies are better at foreign rights than others. Some handle it in-house and some outsource. Well, I mean, technically they all outsource, but what I mean is the way it works. So the percentages for domestic rights is always going to be 15%. So let's say you're based in the US or Canada or whatever. They're going to make 15% on your first territory of sale. So I have a friend who lives in South Africa and his book sold in the US. So his agent gets 15% on that. Not more just because my friend lives in South Africa. They get 15% on that. That's the entire commission, then they keep it. For foreign rights, there's another agent who handles submitting your book in different markets. There's usually someone at the agency, if not your own agent. Some agents do the foreign rights for their agency and take their own clients, but basically they work with co-agents in other countries. These are literary agents in other countries who know that local market really, really well, and they partner with US agencies to do all of their sub-rights and vice versa. So if that UK agent has a book that sells, the agent in the US office, so my agency is Laura Dale, and their co-agent in the UK is, I think it's Hyam Associates. I should know this. My co-agent's name is Laura. Laura in the UK. Let's say Laura sold a book in the UK market. She would contact not my agent, but an agent at Laura Dale for shopping it in the US. They would have like a in-kind relationship, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong about this. I should probably just talk about the way I know it works the other way. Co-agents in other countries. So Sam at Laura Dale has contacts in the UK, Germany, all these different markets. And those co-agents are the ones who submit your book, not your US agent. Your US agent sends them materials, and then they do their own package in their own language and submit it to publishers. Then if those publishers want to buy the book, it's like a game of telephone. The publisher deals with the co-agent then talks to the US agency, and if the US agency person isn't your agent, they talk to your agent. And it's a nice game of telephone about how things sell. And then foreign rights percentages are 20, 25, or 30%, depending on how many co-agents are involved, because each co-agent involved gets a cut of the book. So that's more or less how it works. And then there are also foreign book conventions, like Bologna just got postponed. That's always in the spring. In Italy, they might get outright canceled, to be honest. And then Frankfurt always happens in the fall in Germany. And that's when buyers, agents and publishers and buyers from around the world all come to this convention for the sole purpose of acquiring books from different countries. So some agencies physically send an agent there. I believe Laura Dale does, my agency. The bigger the agency, the more likely it is they have a person who goes to those conferences, or the bigger the agent. But sometimes they just send a catalog with a co-agent. So your book will be in the foreign rights catalog. And that's more or less how it works. So, yeah. I'll answer half of this question. I don't really know cheap publishers, editors, or illustrators. If by cheap, I mean that's vanity publishing, which is not my area of expertise. Generally, you should not vanity publish. Editors and illustrators, I don't know as much about that. Self-publishing peeps might, but free online classes to improve writing, welcome to YouTube. Honestly, this is your best free resource for writing tools, but there are some non-audio visual options as well. Susan Dennard has an excellent newsletter. I hope the archives are posted somewhere. You can definitely subscribe going forward. She has very, very good craft stuff written down. My friend Rosie runs Be Your Own Mentor, which is a blog that has, again, a ton of writing and craft resources. Those are some of my good recommendations. All free. I honestly think that most things should be free. I kind of answered this already, but still, I'm already in deadline for my book. So I'm going to finish my book. And then honestly, after I finish my book, I'm not going to write. I'm going to need at least a 2-week to 4-week break. So even if quarantine rages on, I'll just watch a lot of television, to be honest. This is hard. Good tips for writing good scene transitions. Am I good at writing scene transitions? I don't know. This is where I would read, find authors who do them really, really well and see how they do it. That's kind of what I do. And sometimes if you really can't manage it, scene break. Honestly, just do a scene break. How many hours do you spend a day writing? Not as much as you think. When I'm actively drafting, an hour, maybe 2. On the weekends, it might be 3 or 4. But I'm a slow and steady writer, so I'll write 800 to 1,200 words a day. That said, if it's an hour, if I'm only writing an hour, it's a productive hour, which would be 8,000 or more words, or it could be a not productive hour, which might be 400 to 500 words, and I just kind of roll with it. There are people who write a lot more, but especially because I'm not full-time, I have a day job and a YouTube channel and a social life. I don't actually write that much per day, and I don't write all the time, so I only write when I'm actively writing. I'll go long stretches where I'm not working on a book, but when I'm working on a book, I write every single day, about an hour a day. This is a hilarious question. I don't outline. I'm terrible at it. Outlining methods people swear by. Save the Cat, so that's a beat sheet, and the Catty-tastic Cat has a 27 beat outlining thing, and I have friends who swear by it. So look that up. There are people who like the snowflake method. I'm the worst person to ask about outlining. Or if you want to be like weird, you can outline your book backwards, and I have a video on that. So I'm a terrible outliner, honestly. Let's see. This is an esoteric question. Why do you write? What do you enjoy about it? I think so often the books that we write, it's the stories that we want to see written because we want to read them. I write to tell myself the story. And that's why I find myself writing things that other people haven't written. And it's like, well, I hope someone else enjoys this as well. That's mostly it. It's like how, like I'll have like a high concept idea. It's like, how do I execute this? So I personally write the high octane emotional moments that like I want to read personally. I want to catch up. Yeah. Talking about friends in the industry, how do you meet these friends and get to know so many people in the industry? So for starters, seriously, this is an option to you. Volunteering with DragonCon was huge. And before I volunteered with DragonCon on the young adult literature track, I worked on Harry Potter conventions. So it's just been fanish stuff. Like I started, fandom Harry Potter, and then a Harry Potter friend was like, "I'm volunteering at DragonCon and we need someone. You want to join the staff?" I was like, "Sure," because I love organizing and stuff like that. That was the first way that I started meeting people. So I'd be moderating panels and the authors would be on the panels. So that's why I was an early fan of like Susan Dennard and Beth Revis, because they came to DragonCon and I just thought they were the most fabulous people. Like I was charmed by them on their panels, their books sounded super cool. I mean, I met Sarah J. Maas in 2012 as well, before she was huge. But like fangirl wise, I'm a huge Susan and Beth fan more than Sarah, which is no knock. I just prefer their books. I've read Sarah's as well, of course. But like I loved them and they were so friendly on and off the panels. And I'd see them every year and it would become like, all right, I was working on a novel at that point. So it'd be asking them for like advice and just being friendly. Authors are really, a lot of them are really nice. So that was the big way to start developing that network. And every once in a while, there'd be someone I'd meet, usually a fellow volunteer person, not necessarily an already published author. And we would just hit it off and we would become friends and we would start chatting. And like you start to slowly build those. Twitter, I've talked about it before. I'll just slide into DMs sometimes, be like, "You seem cool, we should be friends." I mean, that doesn't always work, by the way, and don't do that to like, it's levels. I do that to people on my level, but we came up together. So I came up through publishing with people that I met on blogs and Twitter and Reddit, and we became critique partners. Then when I got an agent, I joined an agented author group and I made a really good friend through that. And then when I got a book deal, I joined a debut group. So you kind of, as you go through the different levels, you're meeting different people. But events was her first huge one. Like I'm not BFFs with Susan, but we're friendly. And anytime I see her, we talk. And I know I could always ask her for advice. I have asked her for advice through the years, just like sent her questions and she's really nice and she answers them. And like that's helped me kind of learn things and learn what's normal and set expectations in the early days. And even if you don't become friends with them, just go to their panels, you'll hear good stuff. But that's kind of how I've done it. Getting involved first essentially as a reader and a volunteer, and then kind of coming along with peers. And then through like Author Mentor Match, because I run a mentorship program, I become friends with all the authors who become mentors. I become friends with the mentees who then get agents. And like you just kind of, you expand your network slowly over time. God, it's weird to call it a network. That sounds so shallow. But that really is kind of how you do it. And I mean, I'm an introvert, but I do like making friends. I'm very social, especially when it's through a computer. That makes it easier. I love talking about publishing. I love normalizing things. Here's a question I'm not sure I can answer because I don't know if I'm smart enough. How do you personally you gave me an out. I really appreciate you. How do you personally define the difference between thriller and suspense? This is a great question. Thriller is going to be faster paced. More will happen. Probably usually higher stakes. Thrillers usually have more murder. I think. Suspense doesn't necessarily have to have a killer. Murder. Suspense can be more psychological in nature. A good thriller can also be psychological in nature. A suspense can be a slower burn. A suspense can pair well with other subgenres, like women's fiction or fantasy, kind of, maybe. Romance, I don't know. That's my personal line. I think of thriller as being pretty high stakes, pretty fast paced. Oh, so the one that I'm reading right now is a great example. So far, it really doesn't feel like a thriller. So it's Leslie Cara, Who Did You Tell? I was reading it last night, and I was like, have I hit the inciting incident yet? What is this book about? Because I went in cold. And then I got to the end of a chapter, and it finally hinted at what the character's secret was. And I was at 27%. That is incredibly late for an inciting incident. And so it's feeling more like a suspense book rather than a thriller. I'm not feeling thrilled and chilled, but I'm feeling a thread of suspense. So I think that's kind of my personal line, I think. But I'm probably wrong. Who knows? How does publishing define it? I don't know. I think much like YA, they call everything thriller because it's a good selling point and it's all about marketing. So. All right. I've actually caught up with questions. I'm amazing. Okay. Good. Here. Ooh. I think it did jump. So thank you for re-asking this. If I have completely skipped a question, you can re-ask. Though some of them I might just not be qualified to answer. There are a few where I was like, ooh, I don't know if I can answer that. Recommendations for people who want to be hybrid authors. Should you strive to be traditionally published? First, this is an excellent question. I can go either way. So one of those recommendations I made earlier is a really good person to go to, channel to go to, if you want to see the other way around. I'm, of course, only ever going to be able to speak to going traditional to self, eventually. Rachel Bateman. She did self to traditional. And so it's going to depend. Honestly, 90% of the time, I think it's better to start traditional, only because it's harder to be traditionally published. And you can basically, if you make it, you make your publisher invest their resources in launching you. It's just nice. It costs less. So because I went traditional first, obviously I built this YouTube channel on my own. My publisher didn't do it, but they did everything else. They sold me in with librarians and teachers and booksellers, etc. So like they did a lot of hard work that I could have never done myself. They got my book out there initially. There are thousands of people who have read my book that I have no access to, that I didn't have to spend the time building myself. So that's why I did. I mean, I wanted to do traditional for a lot of reasons, but that part is done. Like now I could theoretically self-publish using the same name and have to do a lot less marketing work than the average self-publisher. So that's made sense for me. Also, just because I've seen some of my idols like Beth Revis, that's how they did it. They went traditional to self. And then other people, like there are a couple other authors where I don't know their pen names, but I know that they traditional publish and self-publish. Like I'm pretty sure their self-published stuff is romance and they have secret pen names. Like I know they're out there and I'm like, you're my role model. You just don't know it. But I think it's both easier and harder to go traditional to self in the weird way because you do all of the hard work. It's suffering before being traditionally published. And I think it then makes aspects of self-publishing easier. But on the other flip side, it can be really smart to self-publish in a subgenre or genre that does very, very well in self-publishing. So it's going to depend on what you write. Establish yourself there, do really well there. And then when you have the right book, do it traditionally. And then you've already built up your own platform and you also already know how to write a book quickly, how to write on deadline, self-editing, etc. There are two people I can think of. Rachel is one of them who did that very smartly. And then there was a woman in my debut group. I know her name. Hold on. She deserves a shout out. It's Ashley, but I just want to double check on her last name. I think it's McClelland. Let's see. I want to give her a shout out so you can check out her books. This is the test of, hold on. think it is Ashley McClelland. You're like, Alexa, this is so unprofessional. I know her book. Let's see. You're like, wow, she's literally scrolling. I just want to double check. I think it's Ashley McClelland. My brain just blanked. Point is, she self-published a ton of books in urban fantasy, which is a space that does incredibly well in self-publishing. She's still self-publishing. She's doing incredibly well. She makes the majority of her income from self-publishing. She's not sweating for anything there. She hasn't stopped. But then she wrote a book that had a trad pub feel. It felt right to do trad pub. She queried, got an agent, and traditionally published 2 books. She's still self-pubbing, but now she's got both sides and both streams. So that works too. But it was for her different genres. So she's firmly self-publishing something that does better in self-publishing, and then took a thriller and traditionally published that, a YA thriller. So it depends. You have to really evaluate what you're writing and essentially come up with your 5 to 10 year plan and really think about what is going to work the best. I was writing YA sci-fi. I knew I needed to be traditionally published first, just YA period. YA is a lot harder to break out in self-publishing. Not impossible, harder. So. Okay, I'll just answer this quickly. I'm not a literary writer. I'm not pretty enough to be literary. I'm not thematic enough to be literary. So I will write an adult thriller. It's going to be as soapy and commercial as my YA. It'll just have adults who are married and have problems with husbands and kids and all that kind of fun stuff. I have some good ideas. I'm pretty pleased about 2 of them. Because I love reading adult thrillers. They're just my favorite to read. Here's another quickie. I mentioned agented author groups. Where do you find them? Once you have a book deal, you will basically ask, sometimes on Twitter, hey, is there a debut group for 2021 or 2020? And someone will tell you and send you a link and an invitation, and it happens that way. What are tropes that I hate? Oh, this is hard. It depends on genre. There's one, I know this won't make some people happy. I really don't like creature fiction. I know that's more of kind of like a subgenre kind of thing. It is kind of a trope, meaning I don't like the monster love interest kind of thing. Like, I don't hate it. I can do it in vampires, but it depends on the creature, I think is the best way to put it. I don't like, well, it's like little things. Like, it's not even tropes. Like, I don't like the I'm not like other girls thing. I don't like, oh my God, I'm so ugly, except every man in the story thinks I'm beautiful and perfect. As someone who's not like thin and gorgeous, it gets real annoying when you're like, I know you're pretty, shut up. I don't like abusive men. I did read, this was in my wrap-up video, there was a thriller, a suspense novel I read in December that just, I hated the love interest so much that I had to take a star off because I was like, I was so upset how it normalized an abusive relationship. I can't. I'm still mad about that. Like, men who get angry and jealous and shout and push you need to die in a fire. Not literally, because I don't want to murder anyone, but you know what I mean? Figuratively in fiction. This is just like a thriller specific one. 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to read like military thrillers, FBI thrillers, like ones where it's like a cop, FBI agent, or a military figure investigating. 9 times out of 10, it just doesn't appeal to me. Like, I'm just not going to pick up those books. Nothing against them. It's just like a preference. I like to read from like the first person perspective of like a woman or a dude, but like someone who's like more of a normal person. But I can do like journalist characters. That's fine. Yes. I'm sorry to tell you that. There's just not a market for them, more or less. Famous people can publish novellas and short fiction. Debuts cannot, unless you manage to get yourself into an anthology, but usually can't unless you already know people. It's just, I mean, think about the bookstore. Think about what you buy. There's really no market for it in traditional publishing. It needs to be a novel. You could write a short novel, but not a novella. There's like a line. There has to be enough conflict to be longer. It's never been a market that's been particularly successful in self-publishing. Sorry, traditional publishing. It's harder to market those stories. So, oh, the chat jumped again. We can wrap up soon too. It's been 2 hours and 20 minutes. Whoops. No one's gonna want to watch this back. Here's a good one. It is harder, but it is not impossible. I mentioned I have a friend in South Africa, so he's being published soon. I have friends in Australia who's being published soon. So obviously the common denominator there, they write in English. So it's an English-speaking book market, so you need to be writing in English. Just as long as you've got a good story and it's in a language that the agent can understand and sell, you are fine. Because then you just have to reach the same benchmarks as any other author. It has to be good enough. It has to be marketable. It only gets complicated on the payment side. It's mostly a U problem, meaning your agent is still going to get paid in the US, but then they're going to do a bank transfer. There's going to be, kind of the exchange fee. Like you can get screwed depending on how your currency is doing against the US dollar. And then you are going to have to individually deal with your own taxes. Some publishers might be kind of iffy if you can't travel because you live really far away. It's not a deal breaker if your book's good. As I mentioned, my friends in Australia and my friend in South Africa got book deals. I will say something that my friend in South Africa has experienced. No problem getting an agent, but there was kind of times where it seemed like there were American authors with similar books that were on sub at the same time that seemed to have an easier time selling than he did. And we suspect that when comparing two authors with similar books, that sometimes the publisher will favor an author who is domestically based. It's not impossible. So you just have to kind of prepare yourself for that. It's also definitely harder if your book is not set in the United States. Just harder, not impossible. And that's the rule of thumb, period. Like if you've got a book set in the UK, usually going to sell in the UK market first rather than the US. It varies. In a contemporary fiction, obviously historical or fantasy fiction is a little bit different. So what are subjects or genres that editors and agents are looking for right now? Contemporary and fantasy are evergreen, and in both cases, well, in contemporary specifically, sick lit is kind of dead. Issues books are kind of dying out. Like they'll always publish them, but it's not as in vogue as it once was. Rom-coms are coming back for sure. And otherwise, I think contemporary is still trying to find its next big thing. Different. I've noticed everyone's just looking for different, and in many cases that does include own voices books or books from marginalized perspectives. Like the freshness can come from just a story being told in a different way. Contemporary is not my area of expertise, however, because I am more on the genre side. I'll tell you, like in thrillers, I just want high concept. Editors and agents do want thrillers, but they have to be incredibly high concept. That just means commercial. And they have to be impeccably written. The thriller market is a double-edged sword right now. It's been like this for a while. They're selling, but it's still really hard to sell one. I know people in the query trenches and also on sub with thrillers, and I sold faster and more easily than some, and I feel almost bad about it. Right place, right time. It's just the college scandal exploding was right place, right time. It was a total coincidence, and it really worked out in my favor. So meaning you got to bring it on commercial appeal and timing, and it has to be impeccably written because editors, if they're going to choose between two, they're going to choose the one that's closer to being publishing ready. So you have to really like bring it. Fantasy, it just has to be different. As I mentioned, they're looking for the next big thing in fantasy. I personally think it's romance fantasy. So if you have one, polish it, finish it, query it. I think because Serpent and Dove, I believe, is creating an appetite, but that is pure speculation on my part. Different. Sci-fi is in a bit of a dead period again, but it always cycles back around. Space sci-fi. I actually think there could be some windows of opportunity for more grounded sci-fi. Realistic sci-fi. Do I have beta readers who read outside my genre and finally give helpful feedback? Yes, several of my beta readers are more fantasy people, but they read thrillers for pleasure or they read sci-fi for pleasure, and vice versa. I will CP books and genres that I don't write, but I read in that area, so that's more the thing. It's that they read in that space is more important than what they specifically write. Sometimes you don't want to CP with people who write exactly what you write. Sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't, because it can get a little too close. You can get a little kind of muddled. And you can also get into a weird place where like stealing from each other, not intentionally, but there can be hurt feelings. Definitely like, oh, I see that you did a trope that I also did in my book. It's like, oh, I didn't mean to. I've had that come up. There's only so many tropes you can write in genres though, so. It's a good one. How much does book length matter in publishing, especially when you are a debut author? It definitely matters. It's for two reasons. Too short a word count indicates that your book isn't complex enough, that you haven't worked on it enough, and you don't understand the industry. Too long means that your book has not been properly edited. You don't know how to edit. You have too much going on, and you don't understand the market. So that's why too low and too high, they're red flags, basically. And what you're fighting against is proving otherwise, if it is otherwise. The problem is statistically 99.9% of the time, agents and editors know. Agents, we're actually just going to talk about agents. Once you pass the agent mark, usually you can get away with stuff with editors because if the editor trusts the agent, you can. But with agents, you have to prove that you are the exception to the rule, and that's exceedingly difficult. So usually it's better to query. This is more for longer. It's better to query shorter and then add more, even add back in things once you already have representation or already have a book deal, because you've already earned their trust. You've proven yourself, and then you get leeway once you're there. So there are books that sell around 100K and they get edited to 120K, and that's how they're published. But that said, paper's expensive. There are paper shortages right now. Bigger books literally take up more shelf space, so it is in a publisher's best interest to publish shorter books, which is why books tend to be shorter. The sweet spot for YA is 80K to 120K max for fantasy, because it's about binding, literal binding size, and what you can do with the paper. Once you get past that with juggernauts, like it makes less sense money-wise the longer the book is. Adult fantasy and sci-fi operate a little differently, so you can get away with different things. Plus, it's about attention span. Yeah. A genre that's considered dead that I want to see revived. I just always want sci-fi to do better than it's doing. Prove me wrong, YA. Prove me wrong and do your job. And genres that I want to see less of. There's nothing currently that's really bothering me. In the past, I probably would have said Cyclit. I was never a really big fan of that. Not only because I didn't read it, but a lot of it's severely ableist. It's still a problem. There's still Cyclit that does that. There's nothing I'm egregiously upset with right now as a reader. Oh, and I want more thrillers, please. I need to read. I want more to read. In YA, adults doing great, but YA needs to catch up. Here's good. How did you decide to leave fan fiction? When can someone know it is the time to make the leap to original fiction writing? Are there any signs? Yeah, for me, I was on like year 7 or 8 of Harry Potter fandom, and honestly, Harry Potter fandom just kind of tapered off. Not entirely, it still clearly exists, but I was part of the golden age of Harry Potter fandom. And like we all started to notice the fandom fatigue and changes. We had a lot of drama. A lot of drama, which is exhausting, but also platforms started to change. I tapered off at the same time a ton of people did. LJ sold to a Russian company and it got really bad. So part of it was a natural decline with the platforms changing and social norms changing for fandom, and it just felt like the right time. A lot of people were leaving it. I also just got older. That was the point when I was reaching my mid to late 20s. I was getting my first real job, burning out at my first real job, looking for new opportunities, reading more YA. It was just, for me, it was a combination of factors. Remember, the YA didn't exist when I was younger. So around the time that I've started to just wean myself off Harry Potter fandom, all the drama and all the stuff, and also the 7th book came out and the epilogue was terrible, and there's only so much steam we could subsist on after that book. I'm not a fan of Deathly Hallows. Not a fan. That was also around the time J.K. started being terrible. Like, not, I mean, she's worse now, but it started around then. Started with the epilogue, basically, where like you start to not trust the person that you've invested so much of your life in. Variety of things. And I started getting more confident in my writing. I started reading more because YA started booming around that time. Like I got into YA when YA became a thing. Started just enjoying more stories. Because fandom was really obsessive for me, to be honest. It is for a lot of us. And it just felt like the right time. I also, at that point, we had seen Cassie Clare and Sarah Reese Brennan make their transition. That was really interesting and attractive. It was just like, oh, interesting. A lot of us kind of thought about transitioning to original fic around the same time for that reason. So it's just a lot of things for me. I just started going off my fandom. I transitioned specifically from like online LJ fanfic stuff to cons around that time, working on cons. I still worked on Harry Potter cons until 2016. But it's just all the right things at the right time for me. You start to lose interest, your friends start to move on, you get more busy in a job or another hobby, you're reading more, you want to write original fiction, you start to feel a little held back in fanfic. It's something that I noticed too. I wrote a lot of AU. Like I wrote things where I was doing actually a lot of heavy lifting on world building, like more than you normally do in fanfic. And I was like, doing all this work, this feels like mine, but it's not. And so you start to have those feelings. It's also easier to transition if you write more transformative fan fiction. If it's not all in world, AU is really good for stretching yourself. I wrote crossovers with other fandoms. So there's like all of those things all together. It happened to coincide with me like literally growing up as a human. My brain stopped forming and I started being a real adult. So it was a lot of things, plus all the drama. So much drama. Also the Russians. LJ became a cesspool. Here's one about thrillers. The ethics of writing a mystery thriller. Have you ever considered that you haven't given enough clues or too many clues? That's not so much ethics. I assume you mean more like structure and like the mechanics. Oh, it's hard. I'm still worried that it's too obvious who the killer is in the IVs. Actually, one of my editor's edit suggestions is really good for the very reason that it's helping me obscure things a bit better. Good at it. But I've always been worried because it's always going to be more obvious to you because you know the end. And so I give it to a lot of readers who haven't read any of it, and I check in with them as they read to see what they're guessing. And I've made tweaks based on that. Like in the early reads, when people were telling me if they were guessing too correctly, I knew which parts of my manuscript I had to work harder on to obscure. The thing with too many clues, this is definitely an editing thing. I wasn't there on my earlier drafts. On this one, I'm being very careful. I have a running list in a doc of everything I've introduced, every clue, so that I have a reminder to wrap it up later. Because I hate when I read books and they don't wrap up all the clues. Even just today, I was thinking, oh, don't forget to resolve that thing. It's just keeping track of things. And you definitely want it to be more complex if you can. But it's a lot of work, so you kind of have to take it in like bits and pieces. If you think this is again why I don't thoroughly outline these thrillers, because I think my brain would explode. If you concentrate too much at the beginning on every single thread that you have to write and every single clue, I think that you'll psych yourself out of writing the book, to be honest. That's why my kind of planting method is working for me so far. I'm doing a lot of work in editing. I'll answer this one quickly. Just, I can't speak from the other side. I'm a one book at a time person. I have to like hyper focus on one thing until it's done, or I lose my inspiration. If you can juggle, do it. But I personally have to go full steam ahead on a single thing until it's done. Oh, it's been 2 hours and 30 minutes. I need to wrap up. I'm going to try to go through the last of these and then we'll wrap it up. And let's do another one of these later. Might as well do one next weekend, maybe. It's also almost 3 o'clock and I do actually have to revise my book. It's a weekend, which means I need to get at least 2 to 3 hours of work in. I'm going to do 20 to 30 pages today. So, Here's a quickie traditional publishing one. Last year, my agent went through a very horrible situation. They set my book on hold for subs for months. How do you recommend coping in like a situation? Talk to other people, talk to fellow clients, talk to other friends, honestly, to gauge what's normal versus what's not normal, to be totally honest. Obviously, bad things can happen, but in some cases, it is then in your best interest to potentially part ways with that agent if it, like, it's nobody's fault, but sometimes you shouldn't be punished for months and months or even more than a year if something's happened. Sometimes that means that the relationship just doesn't work anymore. But talk to other people. Don't suffer through something in a vacuum, especially if it turns out what's happening isn't normal, or there might be a solution that you're not aware of that someone else might come up with. So that's my advice for that. Curious if I'd ever consider going back to writing sci-fi. Yes, I'm currently out of it, obviously. Which honestly, the reason, well, I have a lot of feelings about sci-fi. Maybe I'll just do a separate chat about those or talk about them in a chat. I don't want to do a formal video because it feels like complaining. When I've tried to talk about this, like I did try to put this in my sci-fi video, I was like, you sound like a whiny bitch. Shut up. I've encountered gatekeeping in sci-fi that's pretty upsetting. Meaning never feeling good enough. If you want to talk about imposter syndrome, because I don't feel good enough. Honestly, I don't come from a traditional sci-fi background. I have no science education, not really, meaning I've always been an English person, but I'm fascinated by science, parts of it, like natural disasters and genetics and whatnot. But I've never felt smart enough to write sci-fi. I also don't come from a sci-fi background. My mom never liked it. I didn't grow up with it. So I feel at a disadvantage because I basically missed out on 20 years of sci-fi foundational education that other people really take for granted. There's gendered gatekeeping that goes on in sci-fi. Some people will just automatically look down on sci-fi romance if it has too much romance. A lot of sci-fi fans don't want the romance. A lot of romance fans don't like the sci-fi. I've experienced that from other authors. Just feeling like I'm not part of the club. Point is that plus my publisher just flat out saying, don't submit another space book for your option. My only 2 ideas were space. I still really love them. I have both of them decently, not outlined because it's me, but I have enough of both of them to write them. Actually, one of them, because it's a thriller, it's a space thriller. I do know enough of it that I could outline it pretty decently. And I still like both of them, and I still kind of want to write them, but the market is not right for either of them. So yes, I feel that I will come back to sci-fi when it is time to write either of those 2 things. One is a romance retelling and the other is a thriller. So eventually, but I don't think I'll ever get over my imposter syndrome for sci-fi. I feel like I'm not smart enough, and I feel like I don't have the foundational education. I didn't get into, I liked light sci-fi as a teen. I liked Contact is still one of my favorite movies. I love Gattaca, but I didn't get into BSG until my 20s because it didn't exist until my 20s. But I know I wasn't a massive Star Wars fan. I didn't grow up watching Star Trek. I didn't read all the popular books. I've never read Ender's Game. And so I battle with that constantly. And it makes me pretty miserable. And it's easier to be a thriller writer. I know more about thrillers. I have a decent foundational education in thrillers. So Kiss the Girls is one of my favorite movies, and the book's okay. Movie's better. Let's see. I gotta skim over some of these because, oh my gosh, it's been 2 hours and 37 minutes. All right, quickies. This isn't really quick, but how do I create work-life balance so I have the emotional bandwidth to work on your writing? It varies widely. When my day job, marketing, has a busy season, I can't write, and I have to just cross my fingers and hope I don't have a book deadline when that happens. So, for example, Q4 is always really, really busy in my day job, and I know this every single year. It's like clockwork. Q1 is always light. Q3 is usually pretty light. So Q1 and Q3, that's winter, spring, and summer. For those of you who don't talk in quarters, I try to plan my writing around those times. Q4 is a nightmare. It's why I can almost never get through NaNoWriMo. And I just have to hope that my publisher doesn't give me a deadline during those quarters. And when they do, I have to talk to my publisher and make them understand. Because when I'm high bandwidth at my day job, it does eat up my entire brain. It takes all of my emotional bandwidth because I am so overwhelmed at work and it's a lot of moving pieces. So also then I have a marketing job that has off times. Not every marketing job does. And if you have a job that never has off times, you need a new job, honestly, because I find it almost impossible to balance when I am at high bandwidth at the day job. Because marketing is, it's both creative, but it takes a lot of your logistical brain that I use in writing. So that's how it is for me. Quickie. I have a video on this. Search my channel for traditional publishing. I actually made one in 2017 and then I re-recorded a new one with me more comfortable in front of the camera like 8 weeks ago. So I have multiple videos on this. Watch them for sure. Yay. I also, Novelty show also has episodes on this. Yes, I still use the star sticker method, but only when drafting, which means I haven't used it since last summer when I was drafting. I do not use it for revision, which is why I get undated planners because I will go very long stretches without using them. All right, I really have to wrap this up also because I need to use the restroom. That's your very human update. Also, the chat just jumped again and I lost things. This is killing me. All right, hold on. I'm just going to find a closer. We're going to close. Those of you whose questions I can't answer, we're going to do this again because this worked out really well. Let's say next weekend, either Saturday or Sunday. It's going to happen. It jumped again. This chat hates me. It's fine. Okay, we'll do this one quickly and then we'll wrap it up. And I'm so sorry if I've missed your question. If I could write any kind of novel, no book market in mind, what genre kind would you go for? My go-tos are more or less what I wrote, thriller and romance, 100%. It's what I love the most. It's what I like to read. It's what I like to write. Thriller and romance. I would write more or less what I write. I'll tell you, obviously not sci-fi, but what's worked out for me is that the things that I love the most, intense, like deep, interesting, weird characters, large cast of characters, a lot of interpersonal conflict, a lot of angst, a lot of drama, soapy elements, like where it gets a little high octane. Those are the things I love to write. And I love romance, which is evergreen. And so I can pivot to the market. So I'm fortunate that more or less what I'm writing is what I want to write with some small variations, like, actually with no urban fantasy, with no, but that's like, it's got the world building and the characters and the romance. That's what my second book was. It was basically, it was superpowers. And I loved writing that book. It's like a combination, like the high octane, the thrills, some suspense, romance with some genre, world building thrown in. Like that's my all-time favorite. So you guys killed it. I was so worried no one would show up and I have no questions and would have nothing to talk about. And it's been almost 3 hours and this is incredible. And I'm a little hot because I've got the light on. So it's a lot. And my cats are looking at me like, what are you doing? So thank you so much for joining me. Let's do this again next weekend. Sure, why not? Saturday or Sunday around the same time. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining me. And March 28th, I'm doing a live stream with other people. I'm hosting a bunch of authors. Let me pull up the list and I'll tell you. Rosie Thor, Sanya Menon, Dimitra Brodsky, Alicia Dow, and Jenica Cohen so far are all the people who are definitely going to be joining me. And there might be other people as well who I add. And throw in the comments, like before we go, like some things you might want us to talk about. I'll take a look. And help kind of form. I'm going to do an informal outline, but you guys can also send us questions. So yay, stay safe. Get toilet paper, I guess. I wasn't able to yesterday, but I did buy a 120 count bag of pepperoni Totino's pizza rolls and a gallon of ice cream. So I'm doing really, really well. So stay safe, stay healthy, watch lots of TV, read books, definitely read books, and write your books if that's your thing. I have to revise right now. So bye guys. Thank you so much. Yay.